365 Finance and Operations. First, for those who are not familiar with me, or if you just lost some of the contact details, my name is André Arnaud de Calafon. I'm currently an MVP on AI ERP, which is Finance Operations and Power Automate. And with my daily work, I'm working at Next 365 in the Netherlands as a managing partner and a CTO, trying to build up and extend the business in the Netherlands for this company. So if you want to follow me, I have some contact details also on this slide. Probably later on I will also just share my LinkedIn again on in the meeting chat. But let's go over to the details. First of all, this will be an introduction to security and some of the development tasks. I did do boot camps on security in the past. Then I can talk for about a week, about 40 hours in total. I have a lot of slides, but I've chosen some to just have an introduction on what is security and what might be important for just new developers in finance and operations. First of all, the security in finance operations is an hierarchical model. Not sure if there are people in the call also familiar with the security in the Power Platform, the CE-based apps. It's different where all the security is managed in finance operations with roles. Each role consists of duties, and each duty is built upon privileges. And on a privilege level, some access permissions are managed in the application. It's also a pessimistic system, meaning that if something is not provided to a user, or certain parts are not in the security model, the users will not have access to that areas, except for the system administrator security role. If someone has access to that role, that will bypass all security in the application. And that's not only for just which menu items are visible, but also in case there are some security policies where data restriction might be required. For example, you don't want to have people having access to all payroll information in the application. The system administrator will also have access to that to those areas in the application. So if you have the security roles, to be able to have just access to several entities and features in the system, a user will be assigned to security roles. I'll just explain it also in just a simple overview. First of all, on an authentication level, there are users in the application. Users are set up within Entra ID, or if you have an on-premise environment, it will be an Azure Active, not Azure, but an Active Directory locally. I will come back to that part later. For the authorization part, for the security, there are security roles. Each role will have one or more duties, and each duty will have one or more privileges. And on a privilege level, some people think it's only about menu items, so that's also why I just displayed it here. At least, yes, it's correct. You can link menu items into a privilege and then provide access. Do they have read access, or do they have full control on such menu item? And there's also a line from the privilege to the security rules, meaning that it is also possible to directly link a privilege to a security rule. But if you look at best practices, it would be better to follow the standard process like a role then duty, and each duty will have certain privileges. And that's because also the system knows or just has a concept called segregation of duties. That is managed on duty level. So in case you are bypassing that duty process and link all kind of privileges to security roles directly, then the segregation of duties is not able to do its task in a normal way. So this is a bit of a simple overview of the security architecture. If we look at the full picture, then again we start with the users, the security roles, duties and privileges. However, you don't see any menu items here, as that is part of UI elements. A menu item is a UI element which is visible in the menu that will start a form or a report in the application. But if it's a form, then also the form has a lot of controls, and each control is also an UI element that can be secured in the application. Apart from that, there's an option to set additional security on tables and fields, also for SSRS reports and service operations. So in case you will talk with someone and they are talking about, hey, we need to do something with menu items and security, well, that's not the full picture, and I also created some blogs about it in the past. Be aware, security is not only about the menu items, you also have form controls, some table permissions, and more. But you can just check out my blog for more information. Apart from that, there's also an additional data security layer where you can set data security policies, which would be able to restrict access on individual records. For example, if you have retail stores, maybe a retail store manager would only need access to all information about his store, but a table can have information about all stores in the environment. In that case, you can create data security policies that he will only see records belonging to his store. But it's also possible to set up the system in such a way using the data security policies that a person can see all records, but only interact with some of them, also based on a policy. The data security policies is also known as extensible data security. And if you want to get started, also on my blog, I have some blogs about XDS, that's short for extensible data security, written. And additionally, there's a table permissions framework that is an additional security layer. Initially, if you provide access using a privilege to a menu item, the menu item is opening a form, then the permissions you set on a privilege will be inherited also for the tables and fields used on that particular form. But there are certain tables in the application which contain some sensitive data, like vendor bank accounts with a bank account number or IBAN or credit card information, or maybe some information about the payroll. Those tables are additionally secured, or not only the tables but also the fields. In case a so-called AOS authorization property is enabled for a table and or field, then that table or field should be added to the privilege as well. Otherwise, the people will not see the contents of that field. For the user maintenance is just a next section of this presentation. The users are maintained in a user table in finance operations, and authentication is managed either via Microsoft Entra ID, which is just working then if you're working with the cloud version. If you're having on-premise application, then still there's an Active Directory Federation services required also on one of the servers to be able to authenticate the users to get access to finance operations, as it's now a cloud-based application, just a web-based application. If you are working with users in the environment, you can have internal but also external people. In case of external persons, the best practice and what's also being enforced now since I think about a year is that the external user will be set up as guest user in your own tenant and then add it and link it to a user in finance and operations. Also, a user in the application can be linked with a person, and a person can be an employee or maybe a vendor or customer contact person. That will enable some options to link certain features or records to a person, but it will also be able to do more with security than just which user can access what areas in the application. If you look at the Entra ID administration part, there are several administration portals. For example, a Microsoft 365 Admin Center. There's an Entra Admin Center, but also an Azure portal where you can create users for your tenants, and all of them are interacting with Microsoft Entra. That's for the cloud. And for your information, my presentation will be just focusing a lot on the cloud. If you have any questions later on what is or might be a bit different with on-premise, just ask some questions in the chat. If you created, or just an administrator created a user in the application, then also you need to assign a license to that user, and that license could be a Dynamics 365 finance license or supply chain management or maybe a team member. Today it is not enforced to get access into finance and operations application itself, but I do expect that there might become an additional check if a license has been assigned via Entra ID. For certain features where Microsoft is now working on for the move from LCS to Power Platform Epicenter, for certain administrative tasks, there's already a license check working. And between brackets, it's optional to use also Entra ID groups to manage security or just which rules will be applicable to what users in the application. I will just not talk about the Entra ID groups in this presentation, but I wrote also certain blogs about using or just activating the feature and using Entra ID groups. Probably the blog is still listing Azure Active Directory, but that has been rebranded to Entra ID. So if you are interested in that part, you can also read my blog. Apart from you hear several times I talk about my blog, there's another person around the globe blogging and talking a lot about security. That's Alex Meyer, and also he has some really great insights and blogs about security. For creating a user in the application, there are several options. You can just click new, but then you have to fill all fields yourself for a user. But you can also import the user from Entra ID, or in case you are using on-premise, it will just import it from your Azure, from your Active Directory. So there are two options for that. First, just to show you, if you click new, then you get an empty record where you can provide the user ID yourself, the user name, an email address to be able to know who is the person who should be authenticated. And also you can define a company, a default company where he will land in the application. And you can link a person or just a user with a person in the application. Usually it will be linked to a worker so that someone knows also in case there's a salesperson added on a quotation. If that is also a user in the application, then you might be able to link them and maybe also create security policies that he is able to see only his own quotations and not the quotations of his colleagues. Before continuing, there's also a provider field, which I highlighted a bit. The default value is as displayed on the screenshot. In case you are working with external users, after inviting that person as guest user in your tenant, you also have to alter the provider field, and after sts.windows.net/ then also provide the domain of that company. For example, if I want to invite a person from Contoso, then it would be /contoso.com. Then the application is able to authenticate the user in a correct way. If you want to import users, then you get a list of available persons in an additional dialog. Then you can search for persons using the name or email address and select them before you click on import users. If you open it and you see 3 records, like in this case demo user 3, 2 and Arnie, if you don't select them and just click on import users, they will be skipped. So which users will be imported, you should really highlight them before click the import users. There was one slide before the demo, so I already talked about it. If you want to link a person to a user, there is some functional support in the application that he knows what is your record, but also for security purposes, there are some out-of-the-box policies like employee self-service and vendor collaboration that such users will not see all records. So if a vendor contact will log in, he's not able to see information from all vendors and all the purchase orders. No, that is limited to only one vendor account. And if you need more security purposes, that would be possible to develop using the extensible data security framework. In case you made a mistake, there's an option with a menu item called maintain versions, where you can delete a person link and then link the correct person again. It's a bit misleading name, but maintain versions is the way how to edit the linked person to a user. So let's first go into a demo before going to security role assignments. In this case, I have an empty browser page with an user, Alfonso. He is currently an user in Andra ID, but not a user in finance operations yet. If we want to log in with his credentials, that's an incorrect password. As he's not a user, he will be denied from having access to the application. And he will be logged out again until we create that person as a user. So I will go to another session where I have the admin privileges and I also have a page opened with the Andra Admin Center. In this case, it is about Alfonso Gomez. So actually he is already a user in Andra ID, but not yet in finance operations. And what I did do here is also, just like the best practices, I assigned the license Dynamics 365 Finance to this user. Now in finance operations, you can click on, for example, import users. It will read all data from, in this case, my tenant dynamicspedia.com. I can search for the person Alfonso. So now I need to highlight this record then click on Import Users. It said it completed successfully, and as admin you are able to say, well, I don't need this message anymore next time, and then just close it. What you see in the list is Alfonso is created, and in this case it has a default company USMF, but that can be changed, and by default each user will only get a system user security role assigned, meaning that is just basic functionality, like being able to navigate, also use certain common features like document attachments or some printing options. That's all within a system user, but that does not have access to other just functionality in the application. Now when switching to Alfonso, where's the browser session? When Alfonso now tries to log in again, as he is now a user in the application, finance operations will start and he will get access to actually almost nothing in the application, as in this case only the system user role was assigned, like he is able to see February and he is able to see some work items assigned, but there's nothing assigned as he is a complete new user here. The user can switch a company. As you see, there are a lot of companies in the application, and depending on how security will be assigned, the roles will be assigned to the user. He will be able to see more or less features depending on which company he selects. Go to that section. So for the security role assignment, there are various options. If I need to explain them all, I will just be able to talk for the next coming 6 hours. I will limit myself to the manual role assignment. So from the user detail form where we just created the user, it is possible to assign particular roles, but there's also a specific form called assign users to roles, where you can just select a security role and then add users, or you can then also create rules for an automatic role assignment, which is now listed as the third option on this slide. Being able to limit company access, so maybe a person is a sales employee only in the USMF company, that is possible by assigning organizations, and in case there might be some group people need to have access on different areas of the whole group of companies, then it's also possible to use some organization hierarchies in the application, where you, for example, build a structure where you have some regions like Americas, Europe, Asia, and within each of that region you can then link one or more legal entities. And if you then assign, for example, a controller access on the Americas region, it will inherit automatically all legal entities part of that area. As mentioned also a bit in the introduction, the Enter ID groups can be used also to provide access to features in the application. I wrote several blogs about that. That's also not what I'm going to show today. And also, if you're using some security diagnostics, I will not talk about it, then it's possible to check out if you have, for example, a form open for the all sales orders and you want to know how is the security arranged here. You can open a page then called Security Diagnostics, where it will inform you what privileges have access to that page, but also which duties and which security roles. In case a particular privilege is not added to a duty, or you want to configure it in a different way in the application, then it's possible to also assign a privilege directly to a duty, but also if you have a duty, you can assign it to a role. But if you select a role, you can assign the role then to a user. So in that security diagnostics is an additional help, not perfect, but it might be an option to just gain some insights what security objects are related to a specific page. I will show that option quickly in a demo later. So a bit of introduction to a manual role assignment. If you are on the user page where I just created Alfonso, then the user roles, there's an option to assign the roles that will open a dialog where you can copy settings from another user. So if this user will replace an existing employee for the future, you can select an ID and just it will then limit the number of roles, and you can also include organization assignments, and that will then select and copy all of the roles from the existing user to the new one. And otherwise you would need to just manually highlight some of the roles which should be assigned to the user, then click on OK. From another point of view, assign users to roles. Then at the left part you'll see all security roles in the application, and for your information there are about 170, 180 I guess security roles provided out of the box. I always consider them as examples, as they are just not perfect, but I will come back to that one later, and that's also why we need to configure or develop new roles or security objects in the application. So for example, if we want to assign Alonso to a collections manager, it would be possible to manually assign or exclude users. Select Alfonso, click OK. Or if we want to remove someone, we can click on the remove button. There are some more features on this page possible, but just to be able to do the introduction and keep a bit on a high level, bit easy level, then I will skip some more advanced options in this presentation today. So for assigning the security roles, also a quick demo. I will do it from the users page. If we click on assign roles, maybe we want to add this person as an accounts receivable clerk. Click on OK, and it is possible to add more than one security role for a user. In case you think he's now missing one particular feature which is part of the accounts manager role, then you can probably better consider configuring a company-specific role for accounts receivable clerk instead of assigning two different roles where he will get way too many permissions in the application. So an accounts receivable clerk is, for example, not possible for him to create customers. Accounts receivable manager can do it. So if you think he's missing a specific report which is part of the manager role, then you should realize that he will also be able to manage customers, which might not be required or just a desired situation in your organization. Apart from that, the way to assign organizations is via the option assign organizations. By default, the option is selected grant access to all, but you can also grant access to only specific organizations like the Contoso Entertainment Systems USA. Right click grant. That will just list at the bottom of the page the information that it's now limited to one legal entity only. Now the role has been assigned. If we change the view to Alfonso, I'll close that one, the dashboard. If Alfonso will now refresh his browser, that will create a new session for him. Then it will reread again all security permissions. And now you see that this person will have also some additional workspaces, and he has more modules available. Like, for example, he can go to the accounts receivable area where he can access the sales orders and do his daily job. This first time loading the sales orders page today. That can take a while. If the user will change to another legal entity, then in that case, in this legal entity, as the sales rule was limited to only one legal entity, he get an access denied for this company. And if he goes to the page, the home page, you see that he does not have any access anymore for this legal entity. So I will move it back to USMF, where he has the access. That is just using today the standard features like what is available today, but there are options and always the need for a specific company-based security implementation, like what security roles are really required and what is the contents of that security role. As mentioned, there is not a perfect role in the application apart from a timesheet user and the system administrator. In all other scenarios, I always used customized or new configured security roles in the application. Both is possible using configuration or a customization. And for example, also, if you look at an accounts payable manager, that person is able to maintain the approval journals for vendor invoices in the application. For information, there's an invoice registration form and an invoice approval form. In the registration, you only do the headers, like I received an invoice from Microsoft, but not the details. All details will be entered using an approval journal, meaning that in the standard configuration, if the manager would need to do the coding of all invoices, then you would need probably one employee for entering the invoice registers, and you would need 5 or maybe more managers to be able to manage all of them. So in such scenarios, you would definitely need another security role where someone can prepare the coding and maybe only the manager needs to approve it instead of maintaining the whole process. So for configuration and customization, what is the differences between them? And I see I missed updating the title of this slide, but for the customization part, then you need to go to Visual Studio. In the configuration, then you can use the Dynamics 365 client. Whereas, when you're working as in Visual Studio, you need to be a developer. And there was just also a question, sometimes you see that consultants or functional people take over some technical parts. Also in the security areas, I've seen that some consultants got access to a Visual Studio environment and started making changes in the security. In that case, well, that might be relatively easy by dragging and along some objects and managing that part. However, if you are a developer or a consultant, you need to have first a good understanding and overview of the architecture of the security before doing it. If you just look at the configuration part, then usually a technical or just a consultant will do that job as they are just able to run within the client. For the deployment process, if you are using customizations, then a deployable package is required to move the customization from a development to a test environment, from a test maybe to UAT, and then it will be moved to a production environment. And for each deployment, there's some deployment time requirement as the application will be offline for a moment when the package will be deployed. For a deployment, if you are using the configuration option, from the security configuration page, you can export the configured changes, go to another environment, import it, and publish the changes. And this can be done at any moment without any downtime. Users will also have the option to configure in a production environment, but it's recommended to just start also in a kind of development environment using the configuration option and move that using export import to other environments. If you sometimes do it in development and sometimes in a production environment or another environment in between, and you just create new objects with a new, just a similar name, then it will get different IDs in the backend where it can't match, and you will get errors by moving objects from one or another environment. So also for configuration part, just like a customization, start in a development environment for security configurations and then move it to other environments. If you're going for a customization, then you have just a version control as Adria was mentioning in his presentation, meaning that either it's in Git or Visual Studio source control. If it's configuration, then everything is on runtime. In the past, there was nothing that could think of any history for security roles in the application. Just recently, which is now visible in the 10.043 version as a preview, is a new user security governance module, where also some versioning is added as part of configuration. If you want to know where is what used in the application, to just find out, I need to give access to, for example, all invoices posted, then yeah, where is that used? Then you can use some cross references to find out what is being used in the application and if it's already assigned to a privilege, yes or no. For the configuration part, there's an option to go to and just use a task recorder, start certain actions and use then that task recorder to check if that person or if a targeted person will have access to all those menu items used. And also with the new user security governance, you can load that task recorder and from there start configuring a new security role. If you're using customizations versus configuration, all changes are initially application metadata. So if you're looking at the hard drive of the development environment, then all security objects are just listed as metadata XML files on the disk. If you deploy it to an environment, it will create runtime objects for those security roles. If you're doing it using configuration option, then all changes are stored in the database itself. And then from the application metadata plus the database configured changes, that will create the runtime objects, what will be visible as security to be assigned to users in the application. Now let's go to also a next level. If you make changes in security, or for example, if you have a security role which is currently an activity or team member license level, if you make any change and you add something, then easily it can become a finance level. This is just a bit of all the picture. Not all is just applied here, because if you look at all license SKUs available for finance, supply chain management, then initially you see here finance, supply chain, commerce, human resources, but there's now also project operations, and there are some premium licenses. In a licensing guide, Microsoft has information about the standard security roles, which roles are assigned to what type of license in the application, and that is also managed and listed using information on a privilege level, but also on a menu item level. So I will bring back a bit of the easy architecture picture, where this is not showing up correctly, but on a privilege level, there's a table in the backend managed in the application itself, and you can't change it, where each privilege is listed as a certain SKU. For example, if you look at accountant entity view, that is linked to a finance SKU in the application. In case there is no privilege listed in this table, then it will fall back to a legacy option where it will read the properties of a menu item. On a menu item level, there is an option for a maintain user license, meaning that you can change some data, or a view user license where I can only read the data. Read access is just always in Dynamics 365 Finance Operations a team member requirement, but if you want to do more, then probably the maintain user license will tell you it's enterprise. Enterprise meaning that it is a base license, either a finance or supply chain management or another base license. But on the menu item level itself, it does not know if it's finance or supply chain. So in case there is a privilege listing the options, that is easier to understand what is the real impact in the application. If you create a new privilege with certain menu items, bit of mimicking a standard privilege, but with a bit of different information, then in that case the privilege is not within that table, and you might see enterprise, and then you need to check yourself, do I want to assign a finance, or do I want to assign an SCM or another license to this user? So for the security configuration in the application, I will just quickly go over it, because I want to show you the options for the development today. There is an option to go to a security configuration form where you can see the roles, duties, privileges, and there are some actions which you can start. For example, you can create a new role, and if you are on a duty page, you will create a new duty. If you're on the privilege page, you have a new privilege. And if you, for example, have a tax accountant or a new role already configured, you can click either on a security or privilege and find if there are some duties or privileges listed. But if you highlight such section like duty or privilege, there will become an option to also assign or just create a reference and link, for example, a duty to this security role or a privilege. In case you're doing it on a security configuration form, there's no check if it's a standard object or already configured object. It will just accept the changes you're doing, and before you go, you need to check what is listed on the unpublished objects, and from there, from the unpublished objects, you can select them all, publish all, or say, well, I want to just only accept the privilege duty and one of these two roles and not both of them, because you're not fully sure about one of those roles, they can just select some of them and publish only that selection. But you must be aware that the information shown then at the AAC accounts payable demo role, that will not have the correct information as the actual permissions a user has. Meaning that if you make changes which, for example, added a new privilege, the security configuration form will show you there is a privilege linked to that role, but if you didn't publish it, it's not effective in the information yet. For the security part, you need to go to Visual Studio, and before you can start any new development, just creating new security objects or extending existing ones, you need to have a model. In case you have a new module created, some new forms, new pages, then probably you can do it in that same model as the full customization. But if you are just working on only security implementation, then probably you can create a new model for security additions only, where you will start with just providing a model name with information. On the second page, do you want to create a new package or select an existing? The new package will ensure you have an extension model in the application. I would recommend to use that always, as you're not able to just change existing standard packages. But if you have customization model and you want to create a security model on top of that customization model, then it would be possible to still select the existing, but I would just rather always choose for a new extension-based package. Then in the referenced packages, you can check which areas of the application should be included to be able to reference particular menu items or existing duties and privileges already. And then on the summary page, you can review and create a new model. After you have created a new model, you also need to have a project. So you can create a new project in the application. In case you don't have a solution yet, it will also create a solution, but also ensure that you add the project always to source control, meaning that you can just use Git or another option to be able to store everything on a safe place, but also to move from a development to a test environment using some pipelines, maybe do some automatic testing, and then also use the pipelines to have the system creating a managed solution for you, instead of just creating something from your development environment itself. Because if you create a package from a development environment, maybe you already have some additional customizations which are not finalized yet, that will also be included in your package. So that's not the recommended way. Always use the source control option. For the development, I also quickly need to check the time. There are options in the security section where you can see the existing roles, duties, privileges. Then you can add a new item on top of it, where you can select them, for example, a duty and privilege or role, or just all of them, but that would be different objects. And also here I skipped the security policy, as that's the part where you would create an extensible data security policy, XDS. If you want to have information about that, just read out or read my blog. Once you added a new item, you can go, for example, to, if you created a role or duty, you can go to security privileges and use drag and drop to add references. If you created a privilege, then it would be possible to go to the user interface and the menu items, and then drag and drop menu items on those privileges. And that's the part which I will also show in the demo. before I jump in the demo, after you added certain references as entry point or a permission or data entity permission, you need to set also an access level, which will be unset, no access, read, update, create, correct, or delete. No access is the same as deny in the configuration option, where there are certain rules. In case you have assigned a role to a user, he will have just access like that role defines. If you add multiple roles, then it will also sum up some of the access levels. But the same is the case if you have some privileges with the same menu item. Adding to a role, it will just sum up the highest level, the highest priority for the access level, where you need to know a kind of combinations. For example, if you have none and there will be read, then someone will get read access. If you have read and delete, oh, that's wrong, that's not read, that will be delete. Apologies for that. And I just previous. This is wrong. Read plus delete is delete. However, if you have read plus deny, then deny has the higher priority, meaning that someone will not be able to access a particular page in the application. Same is valid for if there's a deny and delete, then deny has the priority. So if you think of using deny permissions, handle with care. Think of what, when and how to apply it. For example, if you are creating a privilege for maintaining vendor bank accounts, maybe you can also add then in that privilege that if a user would have somewhere access to a payment journal, that the payment journal will get deny permissions, meaning that in that way you can also configure a bit of segregation of duties in the application. Well, let's go to the demo itself, because we almost run out of time. I already prepared a small demo here by creating some privileges, but if you want to add a new item, it's possible to right click, click add, and I want to add, for example, a new duty. We can give it a name. Quickly Dinpad demo bootcamp. For each of the objects you create, there are some properties, and one of the properties is a label, and the label is just a functional description of, in this case, the duty. And we can, for example, use maintain customer master data as one of the descriptions. If you go for just the best practices, the label can be referenced by a label ID. In that case, you can also manage translations of this label, which is now hard-coded, which is not best practice, but it works in this example. And what you can see is, if you have a duty, you can reference one or more privileges, and then it will be possible to drag and drop them from your project where you already created some of them. But you can also browse in the standard list of privileges and move some directly here. Now, if you want to know what's within a particular privilege, then if it's available here, you can open it. Go to entry points where you have information about all menu items linked to a privilege. Permissions is the section for table permissions. There's a separate section for data entity permissions. Well, Anitha had a presentation about OData with data entities. Here you can link the data entities to have access on either OData or via the database management, import-export features in the application. And if you want to secure particular form controls, like maybe a complete tab page should be visible to only a manager and not an employee, then it's possible to just also hide or just manage security on form controls using the permissions. Also for a year I wrote certain blogs about it. Now if you just, in this case, the entry points itself, the sales table is added. And what I did here is provided the access level to delete, meaning that this person can create, read, update, but also delete records from the sales table page, which is the all sales orders. After you created some objects here, you can go to extensions and then build models. If you find your model here, then you can build it. And in this case, I'm just using a new unified developer experience option where I use a local development. Then you can also choose to directly deploy the changes to a connected online environment and synchronize the database. The database synchronization is required, as I told you earlier, that the metadata will be converted into some database managed tables, and that's being done within the job when synchronizing the database. So if you just only deploy the changes to a finance and operations environment without the database synchronization, then those changes will not be visible in the user interface unless the synchronization of the database will also be performed. But if you move a deployable package, including the changes, just if you deploy that package to an UAT or production environment, then as part of that process, also always the database synchronization is done automatically. I have only 2 minutes left, so I will not show you the result of what has been changed when I link it to a user, but I can show you this security role. Quickly go back. What I created is a security role called Dynamicspedia Sales Employee. If you go to Finance Operations, I already deployed this one before jumping into the call today. If you go to the security configuration workspace, for example, we see also that this role is available, the Dynamicspedia Sales Employee, with a particular duty, and within the duty, 1 or more privileges. If you like, you can also just use the configuration and hybrid model and add certain things as well. But that would be up to a decision on each of the implementations. Just quickly go back to the PowerPoint slides, because without all of the sponsors today, it was also not possible to just have everything available and organize this type of events. So thanks to Docs 42 Stadion, and if you are not aware of Stadion, that used to be called To Increase, but they rebranded last year. Also thanks to Executive Automates and P9. Then I will give the word back to Raz.
Wow, thank you once again, Andre. So round of applause for Andre, everyone. So there's your whirlwind tour of F&O security. Very well and comprehensively delivered. Andre, we've got a couple of questions which we'll quickly sign off before we go on to our keynote, just so that we can wrap up. So there was a common question which has been asked. So we'll ask it once. Several people have asked the same question, which is there a general guidance on when you should customize a security role as opposed to configuring a new one? And that's a similar question to someone else who asked, should you take a copy of a security role before you create it? So These are the common questions that people are asking about where you begin with customizing a security role.
That's a great question, and actually that's what I try to highlight a bit of the differences, but indeed there are some use cases when to apply what or not. But also if you start with just a standard security role, what I've seen that people try to change it a bit and didn't work out, and then at the end they just copy it and then continue with the copied, leaving just the standard one also with changes, and you don't know what happened. What I just usually do at implementations is just take a rule. I will create always new security rules. That's just easy to recognize, like if you put in some brackets like I did with Dynamicspedia and then the role name, you can have a short abbreviation. If you do it between brackets, they're always on top, and you know, hey, I need to use this organization version of a security role. But what I do usually is try to create new security roles, but reuse existing duties and privileges as much as possible. Because on the duty and privilege level, everything is already tested by Microsoft. Sometimes there's a small mistake, but that will be corrected with a hotfix. But I also just listed something like the table permissions framework, that sometimes you need to have certain table or field permissions also added or linked to a privilege. Or maybe you would like to give an option to the end user to also use open in Excel features with data entities. In that case, the standard privileges and duties are already just having real good information. But one example, if you have maintain master data duty, if you would like to have a difference between creating the vendor and someone creating the vendor bank account, in that case, you might need to make a copy of the existing duty and then take out the vendor bank account access as privilege. You're muted, Res.
Thank you, Andre. We were about to wrap up, but there's one important question someone just asked, and it does create a lot of problems in a lot of implementations. So I am going to read it out because it is an important one. It's a common mistake that's made. So the question is it possible to amend or create new security roles from the existing roles in the production environment? What is the best practice? So it's similar to the other questions, but I think from production, I don't know, Andre, you've addressed this in the past, but if you just want to share some quick tips regarding how they deal with their production environment security roles.
Well, for the production environments, don't make any changes manually in the configuration. Always start with the development environment, so non-production environment, to test out everything, what might be the impact, and if it's okay, then you move it to the production environment. And that's also just similar to a deployment process if you are using the customization option.
Fantastic. Round of applause for Andre, guys. Andre, are you able to just quickly share your contact details and your blog in the chat so that the community who are not already aware of you to just follow you with all your amazing content that you share on a daily basis? So thank you once again, Andre. Please ensure you connect with Andre, follow him as part of your journey into Dynamics 365 F&O. It's probably one of the best decisions you'll ever make. Okay.
Yep.
So
I will also go through some of the questions and comments to see if I need to answer anything that we missed.
Thank you so much, Andre. So carry on. So as Andre mentioned, if you still have questions, please put it in the Q&A, okay? Because Andre will be answering them. So if any questions have not been answered, please put them in the Q&A so that Andre can answer them. Thank you so much, Andre. Okay.
You're welcome.
So now, without further ado, we are 5 minutes, but that's without further ado, I would like to introduce Lane Swenka from Microsoft. For those who don't know Lane has been very much part of the Dynamics 365 finance and operations developer community for many, many, many years. So it's very, very interesting to see Lane is now part of the Power Apps product development team. And
yes, indeed.
There you go. Yep, Lane is online. Excellent, Lane. So, Lane, without further ado, we'd like to hand over to yourself for the keynote. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you very much, Raz, and thanks everyone for having me. It's been a pretty tremendous morning just listening to all of the presenters, the content, the excellent questions that people have, and this is a special opportunity for me. I love this ecosystem, this community. If it wasn't for a community like this, I wouldn't be where I am today. So I'm always kind of beholden to just activities like this where we get together, we ask questions, we share knowledge, and so forth. So without further ado, my name's Lane Swenka. I'm a principal program manager on, as Raz mentioned, the Power Apps team. We've rebranded ourselves to be called the Intelligent Applications team. If you want to talk to somebody from the Unintelligent Apps team, that's a different department. I don't deal with that, but all jokes aside, we actually kind of now expand more than just Power Apps. We work with Power Automate. We work a lot with Copilot Studio as well, with a special focus on the administrator experiences, so the IT admin persona. But as we know, a lot of us wear many hats, and a lot of IT admins are also doing development. A lot of developers and engineers are doing admin activities like backing up environments, restoring things, and so forth. And certainly, I've worn both hats in the past as a customer and a partner in the community. So I think they kind of go hand in glove, and I'm excited to talk about what some of our unified experiences are here today. So this will be a little bit of a visionary kind of roadmappy type presentation, but I do promise, because I love to write code, that we will have some developer-focused demos that will be live. So all of my fingers are crossed for those. So with that, of course, what's the future of the ERP business, right? And it all centers around AI. Generative AI has taken the world by storm. I've heard comparisons, even as recent as yesterday, that this is akin to the on-premise to the cloud motion. Now, all of us that are in software as a service and cloud, it's like we're back on-prem again, and we got to move quick to this new generative AI space. And everybody is jumping into it, from different community-based and open source solutions to the Microsoft Copilot, OpenAI. There's just all kinds of different options out there. And what does this mean for ERP? Well, frankly, it means we're embedding it everywhere that we can, across, of course, the Dynamics 365 stack, but with a special focus on autonomous ERP and how do we modernize our traditionally business and rigid, software. The first thing, of course, is going to be more Copilots. Probably no surprise to anybody, but we are essentially creating new Copilots every single day. Kind of fun fact, at Microsoft, we have over 100,000 Power Platform environments. Every single employee will soon have their own personal environment where they can start creating Copilots and personal agents. I actually have a couple of my own that are hopefully doing good things for me, keeping track of all of my commitments across different forums, from mail to Teams chats and so forth. So we are literally creating new Copilots every single day across the organization. And that includes our ERP engineers. The engineering team for finance and operations is constantly creating new Copilots and trying to figure out where they fit best in the stack. Workflow, things that have historically been rigid, are going to become more dynamic, because we used to have to account for every edge case, right? We have to have if this, then that, lots of conditionals, switch case type statements, and have a catch-all. If it wasn't one of these things that we programmed the workflow for, then fail, or then go to this start again or try again. And now we're going to have a brain in the software that can actually understand context. It can understand the data points it's been fed and start to adapt and make appropriate action. And then last but certainly not least is more modern UI experiences. I think we all kind of, at least I personally, tend to fall into this category where I think about AI as this chat experience. And that's, probably because of ChatGPT, and if, Copilot is now in Teams, so we can chat with it and so forth. But it doesn't have to always be a chat. There was a demo that Ryan Cunningham did, I believe, at the Power Platform Community Conference this last year. If you haven't seen that demo, definitely look it up. And Ryan was doing something that just kind of blew my mind, which was he was in his email. He had an email from I think a project manager, and it had like 5 paragraphs of text, like just somebody wrote a book, right? And they sent him this email, and then he had to go enter that into a form. And it was the traditional kind of F&O looking form. It's just, boxes and drop down menus and fields that need to be filled out so that you can save a new customer record or project record. He just copied and pasted the entire email, literally Control C, Control V onto the form, and the form had AI, it had the brain, and it interpreted the text, figured out the appropriate data points, and filled out the entire form in less than a second. And that is the kind of like efficiency that I think end users are looking for, especially in tedious applications like an ERP system where every record needs to be filled out completely and accurately. So these are the kinds of things that it's going to like uplift and catapult the Dynamics ERP to maintain its leadership position, in the market. And what is kind of a prerequisite for all of these things? Well, to have Copilot, you have to have Power Platform, you have to have Dataverse. And historically, Dynamics F&O and our ERP Dynamics apps have been isolated and siloed away. And so that's one of as we have this proliferation of apps, it's one of the things that we're going to have to wrestle with is how do we break down the silo? It's just kind of been a fact of life that you can spin up F&O today separately from Dataverse. That's not the case for any of our other Dynamics 365 apps, right? So for anybody who's worked with sales, field service, any of the customer engagement apps, Dataverse is just a fact. It's just always there, and your app is on top of it. And so that's kind of where we want to get to, is breaking down these silos. And so with that, I'm going to kind of walk through some of our admin experience changes, but I do promise, as I said before, we will have some developer-focused demos here. So celebrating the life and passing of lifecycle services. This is actually the title I wanted to run with publicly, but after talking to a few folks, they said, maybe don't lead with this slide. But this is a good title. And for those of you who have been with us in this community for a while, maybe this makes you smile. Maybe this makes you nervous. If you're new here to this community and you don't know what a lifecycle service is, you're okay. Don't worry about it. We'll have other experiences for you, but suffice it to say, Lifecycle Services is the management portal for F&O apps today. It's where 99.9% of all of our customers are today. And it's been around for over a decade, and it kind of shows. It's not gotten a lot of investment in the last few years as we've looked to transition to Power Platform, as Microsoft has moved to focus on security, and now, of course, Gen AI and Copilot has taken all the craze. LCS is not getting hardly any investment at this stage. And what we're looking to do, frankly, is just move the F&O management to be where every other Dynamics 365 app management is, right, in Power Platform. We want to target this experience for new customers. We're trying to make sure that somebody who's new to this space can just go to Power Platform and learn one set of actions, one set of processes, one set of ALM motions, and that it would be inclusive of F&O, of Power Apps, of Dataverse solutions, you name it. And so this is kind of the goal. If you haven't seen this slide before, chances are high that this is one of the first like 2 or 3 slides that I always bring up in my presentations about our unified experiences. But really, we're just trying to get to this unified model where an environment can host many things. One Power Platform environment could have, a dozen Power Apps in it. It could have 500 flows. It could have Dynamics Sales and Dynamics F&O all in a single environment, and that's where we want to get to. So with that, I'm just going to kind of walk through some of those newer experiences in the admin center, and then we also will do a walkthrough. But suffice it to say, we have UI and we have API for just about everything in Power Platform. This has historically been something that has lacked from an automation and management perspective, is public REST APIs that can be leveraged with service principals and managed identities and all of the modern security principles that are out there today. One of the best things you can do with a credential and a password is to just not have one, right? Use a managed identity, let it run on the Azure stack and be much more secure that way. LCS, of course, doesn't support those things. So we're really excited that for the most part, everything you can see in the admin center, you can automate. There are some documentation gaps on those things that I'm working with teams to help shore up, but we'll walk through some of those here today. So certainly you can create environments, and this is showing some of our PowerShell modules that we have to create the same environment through command line. We have a rich command line. We also have PowerShell. We have connectors and so forth. Likewise, another common activity that folks need to do is environment copy. This is something that in LCS, and for those who've worked with F&O for a while, we call it database refresh, or a database point-in-time restore, depending on which flavor of that you're doing. But for those who are new to the space, database refresh kind of pointed to the fact that we only moved data. We never moved code. Now, there's kind of two layers to an F&O instance, if you will. There was the compute or the code, and then there was the database, and you could copy the database around. In Power Platform, they actually manage the code in the database. And so when you have an environment copy like this, in Power Platform, it's a full copy. It's kind of what a new person seeing the word copy would think it is. It's everything about the source gets duplicated into the target. And this is great because now if you have a code problem or something that's different in the source, be it production, you can copy that whole environment to a target and debug it, right? You can wire up Visual Studio and start to see what's going on. So this is something kind of an extra capability that we've never had that we're getting just by being in this new Power Platform ecosystem, because this action already exists for Dataverse today, and we just wired it up for F&O. Likewise, for kind of a history lesson for those of us who've been working with LCS for a while, the copy process, the database refresh is really painful. I probably talked to more than 100 customers on this exact topic. And, for some folks, it takes almost a week to do this end to end, because the architecture differences of your production that's managed by Microsoft. The compute is, using Service Fabric containers, and the database is an Elastic SQL Azure backend. So that's way different than the architecture of the developer VMs that you could create on your Azure subscription from LCS, which uses on-premise SQL and has a single AOS. And so just to get that data out of the cloud, you have to sacrifice a sandbox. So one of your UAT environments is going to get, used up for a period of time. You have to extract that backup from the cloud, convert it to something that on-premise understands, and that's where a lot of the time gets eaten up. And then, of course, you have to distribute that to the fleet of engineers that need updated data. And I think one of the common questions we get from folks with like a CRM background or Power Apps background, why copy? If there's something in production, just copy the configuration table and give it to a developer, right? Don't bring the whole database. Unfortunately or fortunately, F&O at this stage, I believe, has over 16,000 tables out of the box, and over 50% of those are configuration tables. So it's just a massive application, right? And any one of those parameter tables having a single different checkbox gets different business logic that's executing, and ultimately different behavior. And that can be really hard to track down when you don't know what table and what setting you're looking for that's different until you can actually debug it. So this is why this process is so, I would say, critical for ERP customers, and IT admins need to do this frequently, and automating it, not for the faint of heart. So I'm really happy to say, like in Power Platform, copying production is straight to a developer in one shot. The database never leaves the cloud. The data is always managed by Microsoft. You don't have to mess with converting backup files or anything like that. You can literally just copy it directly from prod to a developer, because the new developer instance that's hosted in the cloud is technically a sandbox. So there's really just that simple copy operation, and you can do it right in the UI. And you get, again, all the code, all the data ready to debug, or overwrite from your local branch and do some additional development. So we're really, really excited about this. We think it'll be a huge time saver and efficiency for both the admin on the team who's moving these environments around, as well as the engineers who are just begging for an updated set of config and master data and so forth. But there is a catch, right? As we copy data around, we're now duplicating, triplicating, quadrupling the storage that we're consuming. And so that is starting to become an issue because storage is the new currency of the day, right? And LCS has never really operated too much on storage. Power Platform operates only on storage. If you have no gigabytes available, then you can't deploy a new environment. How do you get gigabytes? You get them from your user licenses that you buy. You can also just buy storage, which is cheaper than a user license. But for the most part, most customers just get it from their user licenses that they buy. And your environments consume the storage, right? The bigger your environment gets, the more gigabytes you consume, the less new environments you can create. And environment copy has just forced, LCS database refresh. There was never an option to not just copy the full source. And so now customers are consuming in all of these sandboxes the same amount of data that they're consuming in production, and they don't really care to. They didn't want to. And so there was a kind of an outcry over the last 6 months, maybe a year, of we need tools. We need ways in which we can reduce our storage where we don't intend to be consuming that much. Hence, transactionless copy was born. Its sole purpose right now is to help customers reduce their storage outside of production. So we did some analysis, and it, I guess, is kind of intuitive, but as we looked at the data consumption across customer environments, the vast majority of the bulk is in the transactional tables. And we have some customers with 100 terabyte plus environments. So very, very heavy on transactions, and they don't need all those transactions outside of prod. And so that's where this motion came in. And luckily for us, there is metadata on every table in the F&O codebase that dictates, has an option for, is it transactional? Is it master data? Is it config? Is it reference? Is it, worksheet header, worksheet line, sales header, sales line, that kind of thing. And so using that metadata, we're able to truncate out all of the transactions, but maintain the behavior of the source environment. So the chart of accounts, all of the module parameters, the release products, all of the things that in the ERP application are still there. Just you have to go create new transactions after the copy. We're seeing that this is reducing customer consumption by about 90%. And it's typically the more transactions you have in prod, the more storage reduction you get, right, as part of this process. So we're really excited. This is GA. It's available in the UI. It's available via API and so forth. So, but with that, let's maybe jump out of slides for a second and do a quick walkthrough of the Admin Center. And then I want to show a crazy idea that I have around environment variables. So let me minimize this for a second. Pardon me 1 second, reshare. Nope, and I lost the sharing again. 1 second. Hopefully you're seeing the admin center. I'll assume it's good. Okay, I got a couple thumbs up. Thank you, thank you. So Power Platform Admin Center, for those of you who have visited it before, you may notice it's looking a little bit different. It's now green. And that's not the only thing. We didn't just change the style sheet, I promise. So there's this toggle up here called the new admin center. Highly recommend if you don't have that flipped on, if you could turn that on. We would love to get your feedback on the new experience. My team, actually, one of my colleagues is directly driving this kind of overall revamp. And kind of the long story short is we've managed to put everything into hubs, or what we're calling kind of landing pages. And so previously in the legacy experience, actions, settings, buttons, they were all over the place. And if you didn't know what you didn't know, you couldn't really get your job done. You didn't really know where to go look for the next step in the process. And so what we've done is we've tried to put all of the different things for common jobs to be done underneath a single hub. And so within a hub, then you'll see kind of a secondary tier of kind of listing experiences, kind of top level entities, as well as some inventory options. There will be more and more things added to this over time. I want to start actually with environment groups. This is something that's relatively new, and it was born with kind of low code management in mind, but it certainly can be used by all Dynamics customers. So environment groups is really kind of a policy, proactive governance capability. And so within an environment, there's kind of two aspects to it. There's a list of environments that you add to the group. And then there's a rules tab, and there's more and more rules coming out all of the time, such as this one here that's in private preview, where you can manage the connectors that are used in apps, flows, and copilots, and so forth. And you can block whatever connector you want, right? So that's this particular feature. There's others in here like backup retention. And you basically go through and you set all of these different policies the way that you want them. And then as new environments get created, you don't have to manage or configure them as such. You just add them to the group, and then the configuration just takes over. It just snaps in. And so there's not a lot of rules in here right now specific to F&O, but as you can imagine, with that being my background, that's something that we're looking at. And one of the current rules that we're pondering is for cleanup jobs, kind of batch job management, where different environments maybe don't have the batch job history cleanup job turned on, and there's all these different cleanup jobs and different things. And sometimes we just forget, or we don't configure them all the same way. And what if you could just configure it once here at the group and then add a bunch of environments, and then they all just snap in, right? So that's one way of thinking about it. Another one is, just using these for traditional environment grouping, right? Like in LCS, we're used to having projects, which is kind of a forced grouping of environments for a given business project. So you could have different environment groups for different rollouts. If you have a North America rollout or European rollout, right? You could have different environments in here, and eventually there will be security scoping to the environment group. So somebody could just be in charge of, the EMEA environments versus the APAC environments and so forth. So things to think about. This is a paid feature for Power Apps customers, but it is included in all D365 licenses. So if you already have F&O, then this is effectively included in the license that you purchased. So something to look at as that space grows. Under the environments tab, this is where you typically do environment management. And I'm logged in right now as a tenant admin. So I can see bird's eye view, all environments across the tenant, across all geos. And I can create new ones. And we can fill something out here. There's a bunch of fields that you have to consider, but a few of them are critical, like the region. Where do you want the environment to be hosted, right, from a data residency perspective? There's also this capability called Get New Features. This is how you opt into the preview releases of F&O. Historically in LCS, you could just find the package and apply it to any environment. Here you have to have this feature enabled to get preview builds of FNO, but then you can get their earliest releases and test those out. Next up is the environment types, right? Sandbox, trial, production. Production is just an option and you can just deploy it, right? For those used to LCS, that was kind of a Hail Mary at the end of the project. Hopefully we've dotted all of our I's, filled out all the right forms, proven that we've done all the right things, and then we'll earn production. It's a little bit different. It's a little bit more flexible here. You can deploy prod, and there will be some integration back to Fast Track and the Dynamics implementation portal to tell you if prod is looking good or not. But there's not going to be necessarily a gate to that. We don't support production yet, just to be clear, but that's the eventual goal, right? So I'll have a sandbox here, or actually I'll just do trial just to show a UI thing. On the second page, once you say I want Dataverse, there is this option to enable Dynamics. This is only available to you if you have Dynamics licenses on your tenant. If you don't, then this is grayed out. And then if you do, there's a drop-down list of different options, and they will be enabled or disabled, visible, invisible, based on which licenses you have. As we know, and kind of as we saw in some of the earlier talks, related to security, there's all these different licenses or SKUs that you buy. You can be a finance customer or a supply chain customer or a commerce or ProJobs. It's all the same ERP app, right? Supply chain and finance are literally the same application that we deploy. There's no difference there at all. If you're the system admin in a finance environment, you get supply chain as well, right? You can see everything. But what differs between these deployments is the other apps that are included, like Copilot for Finance. That might be available in this one out of the box, whereas in the supply chain option, it's going to have F&O, sure, but it may not have Copilot Finance. It might have something related to, master planning or planning optimization, that kind of thing. So it's kind of some of the surrounding apps that differ between these deployments. Commerce is going to have scale units and e-com kind of functionality, but the core ERP is the same across them all. So I already have an environment created, so we'll take a look at that here. This is my unified developer environment, and it's kind of got some characteristics that give it away. There's CRM here, which is pretty standard for all Dataverse environments, but then there's also F&O. And so there's kind of two runtimes, if you will, two compute clusters for this environment, two different databases, certainly. But one environment, it's a single environment ID. This thing does not exist in LCS at all. I can copy, back it up, restore it, and even delete it all together in one shot because it is a single unified environment. As I mentioned, we have the copy options. I can copy everything or just code to a target environment. And there's this new transactionless copy, which defaults to on. So if you're looking at copying and then afterwards you're like, whoa, where'd the sales orders go? Probably use the default here. You can turn that off if you want to keep the transactions between environments. Next up, I just want to quickly touch on some of the how does F&O management look like. If you go to the resources and Dynamics 365 apps, there's a couple of apps in here that are related to F&O. There's this Platform Tools app. This is kind of our Dataverse infrastructure that helps us do app and customization deployments for F&O. So this is really just a standard Dataverse solution that we ship that provides plugins and tables and so forth to store F&O code packages and install them on the AOS. And then this is the actual representation of the ERP app. This is F&O. When you think about deploying an F&O environment in LCS, that's what this is. So now it's an app. The environment's already created, right? And so we can manage this app, and it opens up a new page to show me if there's any available updates and so forth. It's fairly simple right now. We may add more and more capabilities here over time, but I do have my environment open. So let me just load my app here real quick. We'll see what version I'm on. So this is my F&O application. I'll go to the about, and I'm on 10.041. If I go back to this page, it's thinking very hard. So I can update, since it's already installed, right? I can update or install a newer version. So it looks like there's some kind of hotfix available for 10.041. This is what we would call in LCS terminology a quality update. And then this here is a whole new build, right? This is a different release of FNO. So this would be a service update. So you can jump to either one. I don't see any of the preview releases. It would say preview next to it because this environment didn't have that option for preview or early release cycle checked when I created it. So again, really important. Some of those checkboxes when you create the environment will impact some of the downstreams capabilities. But it's as easy as that. If I want a new version, I just click this, hit install, and go make lunch, come back, and it'll be ready, right? So that's kind of the admin experience. I wanted to show now, again, in the spirit of these silos, F&O, certainly the IT admin experience is coming together here, right? I've got one place to go to manage, one set of actions I can perform, one environment at the end of the day to manage that has, two different runtimes. But what about from a developer perspective? We've talked a lot about, integrations and OData and security. And in a lot of cases, we're reading data out from FNO either into Dataverse as a virtual entity or directly as an OData call. But FNO can also talk directly to Dataverse in X++. So I have an example here in my environment. So I've opened the Maker portal. So just make.powerapps.com. And then in the environment picker, I switched from the default to my online developer environment or unified environment. If I go to solutions, I have a default solution here, and I created something called an environment variable. This is used typically by low-code or Dataverse scenarios to have a variable that changes per environment. So this could be an outbound API or an app ID or a secret, or it could be JSON, right? Something that's configured that's unique per environment. The code that uses it is identical no matter where it goes, but the variables change. And this is historically something that we've wished was in LCS, like there was a way to have integration parameters or, outbound settings and things like that. And kind of like a web.config, if you're familiar with traditional web development. And that has never existed. And Dataverse has this option here. So I was thinking, why can't we use this from FNO? So I have extended a form. Really simple example. Under system administration, system parameters, I have this new tab here called environment variables. And it has this really complex button called connection test. And if I click it, it's actually going to tell me a couple of things. It's going to tell me, yes, you are connected to Dataverse, which is really good because we're in a unified environment. And two, it says your variable value is current val2. So if I go back here and let's just change this to 3, hit save, and we should hopefully see at runtime, it now knows that this has been updated. So just waiting for it to commit. Okay, modified 10 seconds ago. Let's just clear this. Now it's current value 3. So again, like this is a great way now for us to ship solutions in X++ and in Dataverse that rely on the same set of variables from the environment layer. And that can differ per environment without us having to change anything in the FNO database or our code. So kind of a very specific example, but again, just hopefully highlighting that those barriers and silos are being dissolved. If I look at my dev box here, my Microsoft dev box, and hopefully you can see it, please come off mute and stop me if you can't. I have a class here, and this is that form extension. It opens up this class. I'm not really going to talk too much about the UI because it's not super interesting, but I did want to highlight, I didn't do anything special here. This is all sys Dataverse utility. This is out-of-the-box functionality that ships with FNO. And so this is an example of something that you could leverage to get access to the paired Dataverse instance. So there's this Boolean call here called is Dataverse linked, and this will always be true if you're deploying an environment from PPAC. So if FNO is being deployed from Power Platform Admin Center, this will always be true. If your environment is created in LCS, it may be true. If you've turned on Power Platform integration and it's a sandbox or prod, this could be true. If it's a cloud-hosted environment, it will never be true. There's a security boundary that CHE's cloud-hosted environments cannot cross, so they cannot participate in this particular kind of business logic. But the new developer environments can, and sandbox and prod can, provided that you've linked it to Dataverse. If it is true, then there is this additional call to getting the organization service. This is the CRM, iOrg service utility. And once you have that, you can do basically anything that the web client and Dataverse supports. So you can query tables, you can call unbounded or bounded actions, you can pretty much do everything under the sun. So definitely, take a look at this, do the, where used, and see some other examples that are out of box. This was fairly contrived example, but again, easy a way to just pull information from Dataverse at runtime and use it, right? So that was one quick example. I'll switch back to the slideware. So hopefully it's clear. The barriers are coming down between X++ and Power Platform. How are you going to take advantage of this? I would highly recommend deploying one of these unified developer environments. This is the link to our admin documentation. I'll also paste the developer overview so you can see how to install the dev tools, whether that's on your local box or on a Microsoft Dev Box or VM hosted in the cloud. So with that, next pillar that we want to talk about, low code. Yeah, certainly. We've talked about Power Apps and Copilot, right? But what about Pro Code? Is Power Platform Pro Code friendly? X++ is very Pro Code heavy, right? We're in Visual Studio all day writing our customizations. We're not necessarily going out and thinking about low code apps. And I think the answer is absolutely. Again, it's the full stack. Power Platform is built on Azure. It comes with Dataverse. In all cases now, the unified environments will have Dataverse. There's a single ALM and environment management experience, and then the FNO app is on top of that, right? So really, because we've integrated it so fully into the stack, we can do some really cool things now that we haven't before. There's a lot more APIs. There's a lot more programmability options. And again, we can stay in the tools that we love. These are the most loved developer tools on the planet, according to the information I've been given. So might be a little biased, but Copilot Studio. Last I checked, like more than 100,000 different tenants are using Copilot Studio to build agents. Obviously, we're doing that ourselves as well. Visual Studio, of course, it comes with VS Code for non-X++ development, but for the X++ dev tools, you do have to use the full flavor of Visual Studio. There was a question, I think, in the last session on, do we need an enterprise or a professional developer license for Visual Studio? The answer should be no. The community edition should suffice from Visual Studio perspective, but there is an access check or a license check that you are an FNO customer. So you do need at least FNO licenses on your tenant because there's some contractual obligations we have just not to totally open source all of our, ERP business logic because it is proprietary, right? So there is kind of that hoop to get through, but otherwise Visual Studio and the community edition should be fine. And there's been a lot of, talk about GitHub and Git, like even Git within Azure DevOps too, right? So can we use something more modern than TFS? And the answer is yeah. I mean, we do all the time, right? So it's some of the best SDKs and software development experiences to work with, and we're really excited about that. And again, all of this is on Azure, right? It's built on our own cloud. And so there's a lot of native integrations that I think not everyone has realized is necessarily there. And so one other example that I wanted to show that kind of highlights some options for folks who are still new to X++, but you're certainly a pro code, developer engineer, like you've worked with other programming languages. Maybe you're really familiar with Azure, right? Like you maybe come from the cloud first space and you're new to biz apps. There is this like notion that is across all of our biz apps and cloud products called landing zones, where we have kind of these cookie cutter deployments and kind of config as code so we can create standardized deployments of new infrastructure and apps across Azure and connected systems. And then with those deployments, we can host those as JSON files if you want to, back into source control and reconfigure environments. So if somebody changes a setting or changes an environment to be slightly different than how it was configured, you can reset it back to its desired state, and that's all just stored in source control. So this is something that I think is a little bit of an advanced scenario, but wanted to just show, I guess, some of the full capabilities that we have. So this is a demo of landing zones for ERP. And so with that, I'm going to open up this tab here. And for those of you who are familiar, this is an ARM template. And if you look at the URL here, it's a custom UI definition. So what I've done, and we'll take a look at the code here in just a second, but we've defined a couple of different files that allow us to have this kind of deployment in ARM experience right in the Azure portal. And of course, this could be packaged up and executed from DevOps or GitHub, any of your like DevOps tools of choice. But in this case, what we're going to do kind of from a high level is we're going to choose a managed identity, which is a passwordless credential that lives in my tenant that is authorized to create Power Platform environments. So this is a way in which we don't have to have a service account that has, MFA turned off and all of those things. This is like service principals and app registration, even without a secret. There's no secret here. It just is fully authorized through my Azure subscription. So we'll choose a identity here, and we'll take a look at that setup here in just a second. And I'll choose a subscription, and location doesn't really matter. I'll use West US. And then on the next tab, this is a totally custom UI that we built. And really the sky's the limit. Like we just wanted to show some example, but in this case, I'm saying I want to create, multiple environments in Power Platform. So let's call this Bootcamp 1, Bootcamp demo. And we've got some, all right, environment types here, and these are totally contrived, right? So I called it unified developer, unified sandbox. These are not something that you would see in the UI, right? This is something that means something to our business logic here. So it doesn't even have to represent exactly what you'd see in Power Platform. We'll deploy it to the US. I'll select a language. Let's go with Italian because that sounds like fun. And let's do Euros. Go ahead and click next. And if the demo gods are on my side today, it has completed validation, so it's happy with what I've given it from an input perspective. I've got my subscription, my identity, and I've given it an array of 1 right now of environments, but we could deploy 10 different environments. So if you're thinking about this from new implementation, let's say you have a global company and you're rolling out in different regions, and you're going to need 2 developers, you're going to need a data migration environment, you're going to need a golden configuration environment, and eventually you'll need prod, but you can do that later, right? And so you kind of have these basic environments that you need up front. You could just configure all of those in this template and give them unique names or naming convention. And you could have more settings in here. You could have an environment group that they get deployed to, right? Like we saw earlier, then all of those other settings would snap in for free. So some really cool things that could be done, I think, with this example. We'll go ahead and click create. And this is just going to do some like basic Azure ARM mechanics. And so this is going to create a deployment. A deployment has like several tasks within it. And then eventually it's going to get to a stage where it has some scripts. So we'll look at the inputs here. This is the identity that I gave it, right? This is that array of the Bootcamp one and the location. We could also have Azure resources as part of this template. So if you knew you needed a logic app that always goes with this, or some app insights deployments, any Azure functions, you name it, you could also bundle those together so that they're all pre-configured to talk to FNO. FNO knows about them. You could add the app registration in FNO, right? So all of these things could be predefined as part of the template. So I'll go ahead and click into this. There should be a sub-step in here. Yep, and we've got our initialization step. And this is going to be executing a script. And so this, again, takes a few minutes because it actually creates a Azure automation account that's temporary and deletes it after the script is executed. And it's pulling all of this directly from a public GitHub that I have. So we can take a look at that for a second. You can tell I've been busy. Last time I touched this repo was 8 years ago. But we've got some new files in here. So we've got our ARM template, and again, took a lot of inspiration from the Power Platform landing zones, but tried to curate this down to something that works for FNO. So we've got our FinOps ARM template, the identity, the different parameters are in here. And once you have your ARM template, which kind of defines the inputs and the outputs, there's this portal file as well that gives the Azure portal guidance on how to render the UI. So that's where that template title came from, the different tabs and so forth. And there's these different UI options for like resource selectors and drop-down menus and so forth. So there's a lot of great, documentation on how you could really make this like super robust if you want to. But just as kind of a proof of concept, we kept it fairly lightweight. And then last but certainly not least, once all of the parameters are captured and bundled together, there is a script here, deploy environment.PowerShell. And this is executing just standard PowerShell that's using REST APIs to call Power Platform API. This is using our business applications platform API. We also have a new API.powerplatform.com. A lot of that now is getting publicly documented with request response contracts. So very easy to see what the request payload needs to look like, what the response should look like if it's a 200 OK. So if you're really comfortable with APIs or working with C#, right, like you don't have to use PowerShell. There's a lot of ways, I think, in which even as a pro developer that's new to this space, or somebody who's worked with X++ and you're like, how can I maybe expand out and do some things outside of the AOS and the runtime? These are some other great ways in which I think you could have a huge impact on your implementation and your project team and help standardize the implementations. So with that, let's maybe go back and see if it's done. Otherwise, I think in the sake of time, it is done. So in theory, actually, wait, let's go back to click on to the script. And it has some output here. So looks like this did succeed, although I'm getting some warnings from the auth module, but I don't see any errors there. So it looks like we're green. Let's go back to PPAC, go to the environments list page. Bootcamp 1 is preparing. So the environment is coming online, it looks like. There it is if I hit refresh. And deploying FNO takes like 45 minutes, so this should be ready in about about my lunchtime. So anyways, yeah, just a quick demo of some more pro code capabilities that are available. So let's go back to slides. And for our last couple of minutes, I will march fast, I promise. But again, call to action, like this is definitely a pro code friendly space. Whether you're in X++, all day, every day. We've got more and more capabilities for you. More and more of those silos are falling down, right? So you can have access bidirectionally to Dataverse and the rest of the Power Platform stack. But you could still stay in X++ and leverage all of those good things with the language that you're most familiar with. And likewise, if you're more like on the IT DevOps, release management, SecOps, like you're operating outside of the ERP application, but you still need to help make it successful, there's a lot of great ways in which you can leverage Azure DevOps, GitHub Actions. We have so many APIs and tools for automation and making things standardized. So we're really excited about that. This is a hyperlink to our API and extensibility page for the admin center. So feel free to check that out. And if you have questions, let me know. But again, it all comes down to those three pillars, right? I talked about breaking down silos, low code, pro code friendly, but last, certainly not least, is this community, right? It's these kinds of events coming together, asking questions. Obviously Microsoft is here because we're passionate. We want to hear your feedback. We want to hear what's not working. We want to know what's amazing. Like we want to know it all, right? So we're in this together, and it's all about these kinds of events. So kudos to all of the amazing speakers we've had earlier today. I think it's been a jam-packed day. I only joined, I think, in the second half, and I believe there's more and more to come. So please stick with us. And last but certainly not least, in case there were no questions in the chat or the Q&A, which I've not been monitoring, hopefully this will spur a few. But I think we've been talking about unified experiences and LCS going away, but when is that going to happen? Am I going to wake up tomorrow and LCS is gone? My heart rate is high. I have anxiety about this. Lane, tell us what's up. Well, the good news is there will be nothing happening in the middle of the night. We are still trying to focus on just new customer experiences landing in PPAC. So anybody who's a brand new customer, they just bought their first F&O license, we're hoping that they would land in PPAC starting in May or June at the latest. So that's still on track for Sandbox. Production will be a quick follow after that. The main thing that we're still working on for Sandbox is getting rid of the tiers. So we've historically had these I guess you'd call it tiered performance environments, tier 2, 3, 4, and 5. If that doesn't mean much to you, hopefully you don't have to learn too much about it. With Sandbox in Power Platform, there is no tier. It's going to be based on your licenses. So you might have like a 3.75 tier or a tier 7. The tiers kind of go away to align with Dataverse and have an elastic compute model. And then after that, of course, production, so customers can go live in PPAC, and then we'll start to look at migration. So we've not built the migration tooling. We are not aggressively trying to kick anybody out of LCS. So when migration is available, there will be a 12-month deprecation timeframe in which all customers would need to migrate. And so there will be, I would say, a probably annoying amount of emails and communications when that happens. So hopefully the anxiety kind of reduces a little bit, and you see we all have a little bit of time. But those same call to actions, I would still say are true. Definitely get the UDE. The developer experience has been GA since last June. So if you haven't tried it, please give it a shot. Let us know what's great, what's not great, and we're here to listen. So with that, I think we'll do just, what do we got? 60 seconds of Q&A. So maybe I'll just say the thank you slide here, and then we can answer questions as the next presenter comes on. So thank you all so much.
Thank you so much, Lane. And your last slide did actually answer a lot of the questions, to be honest. So thank you so much for that. That last slide definitely did answer most of the questions. And in the Q&A, I think there are a few more detailed questions regarding how to use environment variables and in specific contexts, but we can follow them up in the chat. But once again, huge round of applause, guys, to Lane for taking his time out to share all this information. Very, very useful to make our lives easier. Lane, I completely agree with what you stated there. In the past, it has been very, very challenging to maintain F&O environments, and the improvements that you're bringing definitely will provide the ROI where a change that's regarded as very simple tends to take a lot more steps for F&O. and it's great to see the improvements being made to make customers' lives a lot easier when it comes to managing their environment. So huge thank you, Lane, for the great work you're doing in moving F&O into the Power Platform and giving us all the added benefits and tool sets to make it easier for deployments as well as managing for the customers. Fantastic. Well, there you go, guys. That was Lane. Make sure you connect with Lane. He's always making new announcements and very much deeply involved in the future of F&O and the future of the Power Platform. So make sure you keep dialed in to Lane's announcements. Okay, so now we will have the next session. The next session will carry on from where we left off with X++ development, but in this context, it will be with the warehouse management app, which was highly requested from many of you here today. So without further ado, let's get Shabib online. Hello there, Shabib.
Hello, good morning, good evening, everyone, from wherever you are.
Hello there, Shabib. Thank you so much for joining us today. So as we proceed through the sessions, we are getting more and more advanced as we proceed from basic level. So we are going to get a bit more advanced now, guys. You've gone through the whole kind of life cycle of getting started with development, from how you deploy using Git and your DevOps, down to OData endpoints and RESTful interfaces, up to security, and now you learn from Lane about the actual environment administration. And now we will be looking at the warehouse management app development. The reason why this topic is so important is because it's a highly required challenge, really, where often customers struggle with customizing the warehouse management app, which was a fantastic app, but often there's a lack of knowledge. And so we've got none other than Shabib Raza, who will be tackling that very topic. So without further ado, Shabib, are you able to share your screen?
Let me know if you guys can see it.
We can see your background. We can't see your PowerPoint.
Yeah.
There you go. Excellent, Shabib. So Shabib, without further ado, the show is yours.
Okay. Thank you so much, Res, for setting up the tone. And first of all, I want to excuse about my voice. My throat is not good. I may take some pauses during the session, but I will avoid to do it. So thank you so much, Res, to setting up this bootcamp. It's really helpful and giving me the opportunity to present the topic. It is my first experience to present in the bootcamp. So I will start this presentation straight away. So first of all, my introduction. This is Shabib Raza Jaffrey. I'm based in UK, London. I am a technical architect with more than 13 years of experience. I have done more than 25 implementations, covering AX 2009, 2012 R2, 2012 R3, and now working with finance and operations since the last 7 years. I'm currently working with Magic Global and currently engaged with a global rollout for one of our remote workspace provider clients. So it is a very exciting implementation. So enjoying, as always, working with Dynamics Finance and Operation. So what is the motive of this presentation or why I selected this topic? So over the past few years, many developers who have got good exposure with X++, but they don't have any experience or they don't have any knowledge of advanced warehousing mobile app. So they used to reach out to me knowing that I have the exposure to get the overview of the development. So when it comes to the mobile app, everyone used to think that it is some kind of an Android app, it is some kind of a native app. So X++ developers don't used to work on those apps usually or on those platforms usually. So they take it as an alien for them. So when they reach out to me, I explain them and it's very easy for them and I just have to give them a brief overview. So that's the motive of this topic as well, that I just want to give the brief overview how we can do the customization and the extension in this app. Okay, it is a good topic to learn. Why it is a good topic? Because many companies are adapting advanced warehousing module in their implementations. I have seen so many customers adapting, like they were not including advanced warehouse module in the initial solution, but later on they have adapted this module because of its feature. So since the companies are adapting, so no one used to go vanilla. Everyone wants the customization. Everyone wants to learn that what is there in that app. So when it comes to customization, there will be a need of the developer. So it will be good topic to learn, definitely. Um, um, what outcome I am expecting from this session? What I am expecting that what you guys will learn. First of all, you guys would be able to learn how to troubleshoot the existing scenarios, whether it is developed by some ex-developer or whether there is something wrong pointed out by a functional consultant. They are unable to understand what is happening behind this application. How you can troubleshoot it, how you can customize the existing process. Obviously, as I said, that no one used to go with the vanilla solution. Everyone wants their own. Every client wants their own set of customization in the app. So how you can customize the existing process, that's the another motive. And the final one is how you can create the new features. Obviously it will be very exciting to see that how you can create a new feature in the app without doing anything on the UI. I have set some pre-assumption as a prerequisites. What these prerequisites are. So basically, the prerequisite for this session is just the basic X++ development. I am not expecting the beginners to have the knowledge of SCM and advanced warehousing for now. So to understand this session, if you have the basic X++ development exposure, which means that you know how what is AOT, what are different objects within AOT, what are classes, what are tables, what are macros, base enums. If you are just aware of that, that is enough for this session. Why I have written down basic knowledge of SCM and basic knowledge of advanced warehousing as a prerequisite. It is a prerequisite when you are doing the actual implementation or actual customization or actual troubleshooting. So you must know that why and what is the basics behind these key areas, because you will be doing the customization in an app, and without having knowledge of these two key areas, it will be very difficult for you guys to work on that solution or to work on that issue. So it is a good learning to have. So yeah, we will not be covering obviously the functional topics, and I am not expecting you guys to gain all the functional knowledge. Try to get the basic understanding how SCM work and what is the difference between the normal warehouse and the advanced warehouse. So now, after setting up the tone, I will be going to the actual session. So warehouse app history. First of all, I want to go through the app history. I have shared the screenshot of 3 different versions. So first of all, it has started with WMDP, Warehouse Mobile Device Portal. it was really a portal. It was nothing like app in that time at that time. It was a good app in terms of backend features. Like I will show you the code during the demo. Like they have done a hell lot of a code and they have done a hell lot of a process, but the UI was not that appealing. If you can see, like this is the kind of a UI. Uh, uh, like I used to create the basic HTML page during the early years of my graduation. So it is that kind of a UI. But yeah, again, behind this UI, they have done an amazing job to create a very complex process. So yeah, they have then advanced it to 2017 warehouse app. It is much better. It has given us the touch features much faster. The UI was good, but later in 2021 they have really improved app quite a lot. They have introduced the offline capability. It was highly customized. They have introduced the new framework to customize it. It was much faster, modern. You can see the look and feel between both apps. So yeah. So I want to call out one more thing. I want to share one more thing, that you guys as an X++ developer don't need to worry about UI. I am the worst UI developer in the world. I may be the worst UI developer in the world. I hate doing any development related to UI UX. So, but I have done quite a lot of development for the mobile app. So for advanced warehousing mobile app, you don't have to worry about the UI. The UI, you cannot even customize the UI because Microsoft hasn't given us the leverage. So Microsoft has given us the framework through which we can customize and create the screens. And with that given pattern, it will create the screens in the given mobile app. So I will show you the demo that how your X++ development will be converted into the simple mobile screen. So on this slide, before going into the technical part, I first want to discuss about the terminologies. Okay, I have taken these screenshots just today from my mobile, just to set, just to define the terminologies what I will be using in this session. So when we log in into the mobile app, it will land us to this main menu. So in main menu, you can have menu items just like this one, and you can have sub menus like this, and then sub menus will be having the menu items as well. So menu items will be called as a screen. We used to call it usually as a screen. Okay, and under the screen, we will be having the steps. So actually under the screen, we will be having the sub screens. This is one screen and this is the other screen under one screen. So I will not be calling as sub screens. I will be calling these as the step. So we will be having a menu item, which is equivalent to screen. And then under that menu item or screen, we will be having multiple steps. So I just introduced this slide to set the terminologies what I will be using during the session. Okay. So the next slide. Okay. Old framework, WMDP, why I have included in this session. The old mobile app is deprecated, but the old framework or the old classes are not deprecated. So the classes which were used in the old framework are still operational. Few classes has been marked as obsolete. They have converted them into the new framework, but the majority of the classes are still there in place. So it's very important to understand that how that old framework is working. So you may come across the scenarios where the customers and clients are expecting from you to do modifications or do debugging in the old framework. So it is very important to know that how you can troubleshoot or debug or customize the old framework, which is WMDB. So how I have planned to explain you guys is to that I have separate out the key objects which we will be using or which we used to use in the old framework. And believe me, if you just understand these 5 key objects, not even 5, if you just understand these 4 key objects, that's it. You can easily debug any of the screen within the mobile app. You can easily understand the functionality behind any of the screen within the mobile app. So I will go one by one for each object. So first of all, WHS work execute display. Uh, this class is the base class for all the warehouse screens, warehouse app screens. So whatever screens you guys will be seeing in the warehouse app, this class is the base class for all the warehouse app screen. So whatever the screen, whatever the screen is there in the warehouse app, that screen would be having a dedicated WHS work execute display class that will be derived from this WHS work execute display base class. For example, for the PO receiving, we used to have WHS work execute display PO receiving class, and this will be driving from the or extending from this WHS work execute display. The naming convention is very simple, and you will find it uniform across all the screen and across all the warehouse app display classes. It starts with WHS work execute display and ending with the screen name itself. The next class is WHS work execute. So this WHS work execute class handles all the business logic which are needed to be performed behind different screens. So they have created a common class which is responsible to perform all the complicated operations, which includes picking, putting, creating and deleting the transfer journal, posting the journals. Everything is done within this WHS work execute class. And WHS work execute display is getting extended from this class as well. So this is the base class for all the display classes. WHS RF macro. This macro is used for all the data types, for all the variables used across the WHS mobile app. Since we are defining the HTML tags through the X++ development, so we have to define some string. So for that, we are using the macros, and this is the only location where we are storing all the variables used within the app. Now, WHS work activity and work execute mode. These are the two critical base enums we are using. Okay, it is used both. It is used in both old framework and new framework. So it is common in the both framework. So when you are creating a new screen, you need to define the base enum value within these two base enums. What is this WHS work activity? It defines the operation you want to perform on a higher level. Let's say that you want to perform the purchase receiving. You will be creating the base enum value under this work activity for the purchase receiving. And what is this WHS work execute mode? It it is same as work activity for the most of the cases, especially when you create the custom screens. It used to be same as work activity, but let's say that if any work activity is further splitted into subtasks, let's say that the purchase receiving can further split into a item receiving or the line receiving, then you will be creating purchase line receiving as a separate work execute mode and purchase item receiving as a separate work execute mode. So as I said, that if you know about these classes, it will be very easy for you to debug, to investigate, to dig into more about the functionality, how it is working. Um, um, I will go through with all these classes during the demo as well. Moreover, if you want to learn about like how the actual flow is getting called, so you can go through this flow I have drawn. So how it is, how the next classes are getting called when the WHS mobile device service is getting called from mobile. So this is the first point where the application where it interacts with FinOps, and then from there it calls all these classes and method. And over here, WHS work execute display calls the static construct method. It used to decide that which exact display class it has to call. Remember, WHS work execute display PO receiving. It is a display class for a PO receiving. So it will be decided on this method. And then the most important method in this class is display form. Display form is the method which which used to define that what controls has to be placed in that particular screen and what are the different steps we have to perform in that particular screen. In the old framework, it is hell difficult to do anything in this display form method. I have done development in 2012 R3 as well. Over there, we used to have the option to overlay. So it was much easier to place any control within this method. This method used to have thousands of line of code. So imagine you have to put something between that long code. It is very difficult. So it's very difficult to extend this framework. It's very difficult to customize this framework. It was very difficult. It was very easy when we were on R3, when where we can overlay. But when we are doing the extension methodology in finance and operation, it's hard difficult. So that's pretty much about the old framework. Old framework is usually getting used for the existing features or the existing screens being created. If there is an old implementation, you guys are doing some support to that implementation. You guys must know how to debug and how to troubleshoot it. Now, the new framework. The new framework is called as Process Guide Framework. It was introduced with the new app as well. Why they have introduced? First of all, they want to ensure the seamless experience. It should have the optimized UI, touch-friendly navigation, and they want the offline capabilities. And the most important thing, since they have adapted the extension methodology in Dynamics, so they want something which can be extended very easily. It should be developer friendly. If you want to create the new feature, new screen, it should be easy to create. It should not be very complicated. So yeah, that's why they have introduced this new framework and new app. Um, Previously, we used to have the on-prem app, so it used to take help from IIS to get the app published to the internet, and then it used to communicate with the mobile through IIS. But now, since we are on a cloud-based application, so we don't need any mediator. Our app is directly communicating to IIS without any mediator. Now, just like I have gone through the key objects for the old framework, I will be going through the key classes for the new framework as well. So there are three types of classes. One is controller, one is a step, and the other is page builder. I have given you the overview of the terminologies, and that there will be a screen, and under the screen there can be multiple steps. So from that terminology, it will be very easy for you to understand that how you will be structuring your classes. So let's say you are someone has given you the task to create one screen, okay, and under that screen you can have multiple steps. So you will be creating a controller for that screen. A controller decides that how the screen will initiate, how the screen will navigate among different steps. That's the only purpose of controller. Now, the next important one is steps. Steps, one controller or one screen can have multiple steps. As I have shown you in this slide, that this is one screen. It has got 1 and 2 steps. First step is getting the container, and the second step is getting the asset. So one controller can have multiple steps, or one screen can have multiple steps. So each step will be extended will process guide step, or it can be extended with some other thing as well, which I will be covering in the next slide. But each step can have a page builder or cannot have a page builder. So page builder itself, it's self-explanatory that it is used for the page building. So page builder is responsible to control the display of that step. You want to display the controls, you want to display the text boxes, you want to display the labels, buttons, whatever you have to display on your step, you have to define everything in the page builder. So each step can have a page builder, but for some cases, we cannot have the page builder. I will explain that in my next slide. But yes, if you want to display anything in any step, you must have to define the page builder. So to summarize, you have 3 layers. One is the controller layer, which controls your screen, navigation, initialization. The second layer is a step, which used to control your business logic. And the third layer is the page builder, which is your UI layer. Now, in this slide, I will be covering more important points used for the or essential for the development you should know. The previous slide covers the key points or key classes, like that is mandatory to be used. But here are the more important points. First of all, navigation agent and factory. When I started working first time on this mobile device with the new framework, process guide framework, I use the navigation agent for each step. So you can define navigation agent for each step, but it is not mandatory. It is helpful when you have to decide multiple things within the within the movement of the step. Like you have to define some decision. Let's say that if the quantity is greater than 0, go to step this, otherwise go to step that. So in that case, you can use navigation agent, but it is not mandatory. The next important thing is mobile device menu item. It is not related to AOT. It is not related to the X++ development. It is related to the front end of the finance and operation. But without this important point, we cannot complete our development. Why? Once we have developed all the classes, all the steps, controller, everything, then we have to navigate to the front end application, and then over there we have to create the mobile device menu item. When we will be creating the mobile device menu item in the finance and operation application, then we can only see that menu item in the mobile device. I will show you in the demo how to create the mobile device menu item as well. The next important point is clearing the cache. This has given me the nightmare. When you want to add any additional step in the previously developed mobile app, it will not reflect. Even the compilation is fine, everything is fine, your code is reviewed, but it will not appear in the mobile app because the cache has not been flushed off. So it is just an additional, but the important point that you should know that after adding steps to the additional, after adding steps to the existing app, you must know that cache can cause you the trouble. Okay. Now the next point will relate to the previous slide, process guide step without prompt. So this is the class which is used as a parent class or as a base class for this step. Okay, this is step class where it can be used if you want to process. If you want to use the step just for the processing purposes, you don't want to display anything in your step, then you will be using or you will be creating the step, extending it from this class. It is used in those cases where you are running a very complicated scenarios, where the data is getting gathered from different screens based on different conditions. And at the very end, you have to perform the execution, whether it can be posting, it can be creation of the journals, or it can be any complicated scenario. In the normal scenarios, or maybe for even for the mid-level complex scenarios, you can do all your processing, all your execution at the very last step you are defining over here. But again, it's your choice that you want to perform the execution or the processing at the last step, or you want to do the execution or processing at creating the new step, extending it from process guide step without prompt. Now, the last important object I want to discuss is decorator factory. Decorator factory itself is itself telling by its name that it is related to the UI or decoration. So if you want to introduce the exciting features in your, not the exciting actually, let's say that if you want to enable the multi-scan option within your step, so you can use decorator factory. If you want to display the list, just like you have the list in your mobile or in finance and operation, even you have the inquiries. If you want to display some list, you can use decorator factory. And yeah, so for these purposes, you can use decorator factory. It's basically used for the for structuring the responses on app. but it is a very advanced topic. I will not be covering it in demo. But yes, it is a good class to know, and it should be used wherever it is needed. So that's until the last slide. That's what I want to discuss. Technical. I want to discuss about the technical points. Now in this slide, it is not about the technical points. It's about the strategy or the design. What you want to create, or how you want to go with the development. So let's say that you are given a task to create the new feature. How you will strategize yourself before going into the development. I don't want, like, no one should go to the development without planning. So how you will plan the development in advanced warehouse mobile app? So first of all, whenever someone asks you for the new feature, you will always go with the process guide framework, which is the new framework. You will not be using the old framework, because you never know how when Microsoft will be deprecating that. And it's easy to develop as well. So first of all, you need to define the prereqs. So for the prereqs, you will be defining the base enum values or base enum elements within these two base enums, which I have discussed earlier. These two base enums are common between the old and the new framework. So you need to define that value in these two base enums. On the next thing, like the next part will be that you need to set that how many steps will be there. Whether it is 2, it is 3, you need to set that how many steps will be there. And when you are deciding the steps, you need to be very sure that how many controls will be there in those steps, how many validations you need to perform in those steps, what will be the exit criteria of each step. Sorry for that. So you need to define all of these things in each step. So before going into the development, you must know that how many steps will be there, what will be the name of those steps, and how many controls you will be having against each step. Now, on the third part, once you are clear with the steps, you need to define the controller. On the controller, you need to be very sure that what will be your initial step, how the navigation will run between the steps. If there is some conditional dependency between the steps navigation, then you have to introduce the navigation agent, and you don't have to define the navigation over here then. And then how you will be doing the final execution. You have to do the final execution. It can be a posting of journal. It can be a creation and posting of journal. It can be just creation of few records, just like we did in a demo as well. I will show you. You need to be very sure that what you have to do in the final execution, whether you have to create the final step just for the execution, or you can code the execution process within the final step, what you are deciding over here. Okay, so that's pretty much it about the presentation. Now I will be going to demo. So before going to demo, I want to set the expectation that first I will be going to the finance and operation application to show you that what are the key navigations, what are the key forms within the finance and operation related to mobile app. I will give you brief overview how to debug, troubleshoot, and customize the warehouse app. And then the last part, I have already created a very simple two steps mobile screen that will link a container to asset. So I will open the development environment. Let me know if you can see it. Okay, so this is my finance and operation application. So first of all, I will go through each of the key menu items used for the warehouse mobile app. I will go to warehouse management. This warehouse management module is for the advanced warehousing. So first of all, I will go to the mobile device menu item as I have stated during the presentation as well. This is one of the key object I have to use. So you can create a new menu item and name that menu item whatever you want to as per your requirement. Title, the mode depends upon, like, if you want to perform the work is a separate topic. It derives from the functional knowledge. I will not be going with this on this topic. Usually the customized screen are created with the indirect mode. It means that whatever you will be defining, you will be just defining on the classes you will be creating. And then the activity code. Activity code is the same thing which we discussed, WHS work activity base enum. So these are the base enum values which I discussed during the presentation. It is the work activity code base enum. So you will define what work activity you want to select. Obviously, you would have created the new one for your new screen. And use process guide. This is one of the most important thing in this form. So whichever stream has got this toggle enable, it will be using the new framework. And whichever stream is not using this, like it is set as no, it means that they are still using the old framework. So like I can show you. There is one famous screen. I have to delete it first. Okay, this is the purchase order receiving screen. It is not using process guide, so it is hell difficult to deal with customizing this one. So anyhow, nothing is difficult if you know how to dig into it. So the next important screen, once you are done with the creation of new menu item, just as I have created one for my for my demo, you will go to the mobile device menu screen. On this mobile device menu screen, you will see all the menus and the sub menus. Okay. So this is our main menu, and all of the others are the sub menus. What I have done, I have placed my newly created screen in the main menu. It is over here. So that's it. You just need to select the one of the menu items and just drag it over here and save. Save it. That's it. Sorry for that. The next important screen is under the warehouse management, worker, setup and worker. Where is setup and worker. So over here, you will define the login for your user. It is the Contoso environment. So when it is a normal environment for any implementation, you will be having all the workers stated over there who are enabled for the advanced warehousing. So let's say that you have your worker present over there. You will just be creating the new user, just like I have created new for mine yesterday, and define the default warehouse. It can be changed later from the app itself. And you just need to define the menu name, that what will be the menu name when you will be logging in. I have navigated you through the menu, the WHS work menu form as well. So all these menus are coming from there. Okay, so that's it. Your user is set. You have to just set the password, and your user is set to log in the advanced warehousing mobile app. The one more important screen which I need to go through is the work user session. Since we are developers, when we are doing the development, we used to break so many things during the development, and especially when we don't know much about the development. So we used to do hit and try, and during that hit and try, we used to break so many things. So we can come to that state that we got an error in a mobile app, and it is not allowing us to go forward. It is not allowing us to go back. It is not allowing us to log off from the mobile app. It is just stuck in that position. So to handle that, if you go to the inquiries under the mobile device log, you can go to your work user sessions, and over here you can see your session, whatever your session would be there, and you can just simply end that session. And when you end that session, you can fix the code and try to log in again. It will behave fine. And if you are in the debugging mode, you can restart your debugging from the scratch. Yeah, so this is very important to end your session. Okay, so this is about the key navigations or key screens. Now I will go to Visual Studio to show you the existing classes, like the old framework, how it behaves, and how you can debug or troubleshoot the old framework. First of all, I will go to WHS work execute class. I want you guys to recall that old class, all the classes which I told during the session, during the presentation. I will go to WHS work execute class. Okay, so this is the base class for all the display classes, and even the WHS work execute display class. Okay, so over here you can see that all the key methods used for processing are defined, like create the transfer journal, create and post transfer journal, create journal header line. Everything is defined over here. Okay, so you may need to debug these methods over the time. You may need to understand or reverse engineer these methods as well if requested. Yeah, so it's a good class to know. The other class is WHS work execute display. Okay, so as I told you that all the display is controlled through this class. Okay, and under this class there is one important method called display form, which is responsible to render our UI to the mobile app. Okay, so it has got all the key operations which are used in the drive classes. So add button and everything, like you can see over here. So as I have told you during the session, that each screen will be having a separate display class. So you can see over there the naming convention, WHS work execute display, and as a postfix you can see the screen related information. So yeah, so all the screen will be having the WHS work execute display class. Few classes are obsolete now. I think these two classes are obsolete, which I remember, but most of the classes are still in operation. Now, if you got the requirement to debug the purchase receiving menu item, like user is facing some issue and someone reaches out to you to debug that particular mobile item, then what you will do, You will just try to look from the naming itself. You will be able to find that PO receiving class. Okay, that's the one thing. The other thing is, and you can do the you can put the debugger. The other thing is that you can go to the mobile device menu item. Okay, and under the mobile device menu item, unlike FinOps, when you are doing the development in FinOps, you can see the form information name and you can do the debugging by going on to that form. But on the mobile device, you don't have that leverage. So you don't need to worry. You will go to that particular form which user is on which user is performing the action. Let's say it is purchase receive. So you will go to this form, okay, and you will see this drop down. It can be the work activity, what I have created over here, okay, work activity code, okay. It can be this, or it can be the work execution mode. WHS work execution mode. This is WHS work execution mode drop down. Okay, and the value selected behind it is purchase order item receiving. So what I will do, I will go to that base enum. Okay, I am not aware of the classes. Let's say I will go to that base enum WHS work execute mode. Okay, and I will go to that particular element. Okay, this is the same element, purchase order item receiving. Okay, and I will do find references. Over here, I will find the display class related to this particular element. Now I can put debugger over here. Okay, this is further driving from the PO receiving. So there can be or there cannot be the display form method present over there. So the display form method is not there. So I can go to the parent class. Okay, but I am landed to the right location because this work execute mode is tagged as a header to this class. And I can put the debugger over here. It will definitely come to at any point. And if you want to go to the display form method, I will go to this definition. And we'll go to this display form method. It used to take the request. It used to take the container, what we are receiving from the mobile app, and it used to return the container, what we have to display in the mobile app. So this is the most critical method in all of these classes, all of this work execute display classes. So if you put the debugger, you can do everything what you want to do. As I've told you, it is very difficult to extend, but it can be extended. I have done so many customization in FinOps as well for these classes. So it can be extended and you can extend this method in your extension classes. And if I show you that how big is this method, it is 1,000 lines of, there are more than 1,000 lines within this method. So you can understand yourself that how you can extend it. It is very difficult, but yes, everything can be done. I am just cautious of time. Now I have to go through the process guide. That's all about the old framework. From this information, you can easily troubleshoot or debug or extend any existing process. Now, if you want to create the new class, new feature, new screen. So first of all, you first have to strategize that how that screen will look like, how many steps will be there, how many controls will be there in each step. So for my case, I will be doing just a asset scan on a container. So I will be setting two steps, one for the container scan and one for the asset scan. Okay. So first thing what I will do, I will create a extension of these two main classes, which these two main enums, which I am iterating continuously during the session. I will be creating my new base enum over here, and you can see the label. Okay. And after creating the base enum, I will be creating the classes. Now, when it comes to classes, since I am creating two steps, so I have created one step for container ID and the other step for the asset ID. The naming convention should be followed like this: WHS process guide asset. Asset is my screen, and sorry, asset scan is my screen, and asset ID is my step name. So and MZK is the convention I am following for my development. So starting with WHS process guide, asset scan is the screen name, and asset ID is the step name. And it is ending with the step telling that this class is the step class. So I have created two steps. Each step is linked with the page builder, and on the final step, which is my asset step, I will be performing the execution where I am inserting the data into the MZK asset table. So I will quickly go to the steps and the page builder. If you can see, like, I am not worried about the syntax. Syntax can be easily handled through the through ChatGPT or through Google. The main thing you must know is the structure. So the look how simple is that? You are just defining the page builder name, which is my UI controller. I will go to that. Okay. Over here, I am just adding the control using these two methods, label and text box. And I am adding the buttons on the action control method. That's it. That's my page for the container step. And over here, this is complete method is defining the exit route for this step. I am saying that if my container is blank, then it should not be navigated to the next step. That's how I am stopping my step to close. Okay. So if my container is not if my container is not blank, it will be navigated to the next step, which is my asset ID. Okay, I am just conscious of time. On this asset ID step, again, it is very simple. Is complete method is defined just as I have defined in container. The the page builder looks like exactly same. I have just placed the asset ID control on the page builder. If I show you, okay, asset ID control on the page builder. And over there, I have put one additional method for the validation control. If you want to put additional validation, you can define all your validation on this method. Then execute action. I want to execute all my process in this last step. So I have used this execute action. So this execute action, if the action name is okay, like if the okay button is pressed, then I will run my custom process. It can be any process. In my case, it is a simple process where I am getting the value from pass and populating it to the container and asset ID and inserting it into the table. Okay. I haven't gone through this pass. Just quickly giving you the overview, what does this pass do? This pass is a map defined over here, WHSRF pass through. This is a map. You don't have to worry about inserting the value into the map. As soon as you exit from the control, you exit from the step, it used to store the value in this pass. This is how it used to retain the session value. So once you are exit from any step, it used to store the value over here, and then you can retrieve that value using this method and process that value however you want to do. So that's pretty much it about the steps and the page builder. The one last thing is the controller. On controller, I am setting the initial step. What will be my initial step? My initial step will be container, and my navigation route will be that container will be having the asset scan as a next step, And then after the asset scan, I want the next container to be scanned. So after this asset scan, I have defined the next step as a container again, if you can see this. So this is my simple navigation route. Okay. Now I will quickly go to, I am over time. I will quickly go to the mobile app to show you how this app will work. I am using the simulator. This simulator is very handy when you are doing the development. It is recommended to use this simulator. It will give you the same experience as the mobile app. So you don't need to navigate to different applications again and again. So SR is my user ID. 123 is my password. I will go inside it. So you can see that the new menu item is there, which I have placed, and this is my menu item which I have developed. Okay, I will go into this menu item. It is asking me for the container ID. I am just putting random value over here, and I am putting random value over here as well. That's it, and it is saved. I will go to SQL just to show you this value. It is just saved at 1902. I am over time. So this is the look and feel how the simulator will look. Okay, I can also show you the mobile app, how the mobile app will look like. It is not the mobile app, it is the Windows app. Okay, so you can see that same screen on the Windows app. I will first go to the main screen. This is the menu item. Okay, over here I will go to the asset scan. I will put the container ID. It is much easier to handle this app on mobile device. I will put the asset ID, and that's it. Okay. Oops, it was already saved. Now I will go back to SQL to show, and here you can see the newly record created at 19:55. So that's it for the demo. It was a bit technical, but I hope you guys have got something. So if you guys have any question, you are open to ask.
Wow, round of applause for Shabib. That's one. There you go. Some excellent feedback already in the chat there for you, Khabib. So it was something that was well demanded by the community, and you delivered. So thank you so much, Shabib. There are no questions at the moment, but if you could share your contact details in the chat so that the community can keep in touch, that'd be really helpful.
Yeah, sure thing.
Thank you once again, Shabib. Round of applause for Shabib, everyone. Excellent. Okay, so we are now on to the next session, and it's with none other than Beau and Nathan. Hello there, Beau. Hello there, Nathan.
Hey, how are you?
Hey, fantastic. Excellent. So we've got Nathan online and we've got Beau as well. So thank you both. So if you could try share, there you go. We can see your screen now. So without further ado, as we've gone 5 minutes into your time already, for those people who are not aware, Nathan and Beau represent the US community for Dynamics 365 Finance and Operations, and they're doing a lot of work in the space of F&O development and integration. I've known Nathan for quite a while now, and he's run a lot of the developer boot camps and integration boot camps. So without further ado, Nathan and Beau, over to you.
Well, thank you. So Beau, I'll get us started off. So Beau and I will be presenting a session we're calling Integration Overkill. We just really want to go through all the high-level pieces of integrations, integration patterns, some of the tools, as part of the global bootcamp here. If you have any questions, put them in the chat, and we'll do our best to get to all questions and answer them as best we can. I'm Nathan Klaus. I'm also doing a session right after this on performance troubleshooting that is more technically oriented to developers and all the tools that we have.
And I'm Beau Suizo. I am also presenting alongside Nathan and excited about it. So I know we're 5 minutes over, so I've slammed a Red Bull right before this presentation so we can speed through this. We're going to, in the spirit of talking about integrations, we're going to speed run this. So a little gaming reference, if you catch it. Yeah, I've been in the F&O and AX space for the past 15 years and been an implementer for almost all of that. So yeah, like Nathan said, this is a little tongue-in-cheek to has a lot of callbacks to a video game called Turbo Overkill. So if you guys have seen this game or played it, please send us a message in the chat on your favorite character, and we'll see if that's our favorite character too. Cool. Let's talk about the Armory. Let's talk about our integration tools. So there are, just a quick call out, there's more integration tools that could be in the Armory. We're choosing to talk about 5 today. The first one that we'll talk about is data events. Next is business events, virtual entities, and our favorite integration tool, Dual Write, and my personal favorite, custom services. So what are data events? Data events essentially are an integration tool that can be triggered through a change in data. So you can do a create or an insert or an update or a delete, and that'll trigger an integration within X++ land. Typically, you have data events triggering at the lowest level or the closest to the metal. Let's talk about business events. Again, we're going to speed run through some of this. Business events are kind of similar. Business events typically run from exactly what the name suggests. So this will trigger an integration when something on the front end has happened. So think about like confirming a purchase order is one of the out-of-the-box business events. And of course, just like everybody's familiar in this bootcamp, if we've got X++, we can customize it. So business events, you can make your own custom business events as well. So let's talk about the differences between data events and business events. So over on the left, we've got a couple examples. We've just created a record in Ven Perch Order Juror and our Ven Packing Slip Juror, which is our confirming a purchase order and our product receipt. The result you'll see on the bottom, it's exactly the same, or that's what it suggests, right? Whether we're doing creating this record through the front end or the back end, in the front end, in this example, we're actually pressing buttons that create those records. And then in the back end, we're either doing this through a run method or through a different call, through chain of command or what have you. So what's the difference? Let's talk about that. So data events are events that are required for timely data handling. So you typically use that to avoid our unnecessary data loads, or that's when you're going to be using it for data structures that are, again, close to the metal. Data events you're typically using for asynchronous processing. So your business events are, well, back to data events. You're typically using data events on something that's going to shoot off to like a batch job that is not going to hold up the user from continuing their job. Business event is something that they're typically doing as their job. So they need to confirm a purchase order and it needs to fire off an integration. And they need that synchronous connection in order to do their next step. So kind of think about it in that kind of terms, where a data event can be something that's asynchronous and a business event can be synchronous. let's talk about some performance considerations. Data events, since you can offload that into an asynchronous call, I would suggest that they're best suited for your high volume data integrations. Again, when real-time processing isn't super critical, and when your the impact on performance is concerned when you're talking about large data sets. So when you're talking about triggering an integration on something like InventTrans, yes, I've seen that. I would not recommend that. But you're typically not doing something on an integration at that large of a scale unless you're doing an integration through like a business or a data event, and definitely not something that would be hit with a business event.
Hey, Beau.
Yeah.
We're getting some feedback in the chat that some individuals can't see what's being presented. So I'm going to unshare, and then I'm just going to share a monitor rather than the presentation itself. So
Okay.
I'm going to just do that real quick, and then hopefully we'll get feedback that everyone can see what we expect. So sorry for the technical difficulties. One moment, please.
All right. Can everyone see it?
So I'm sorry, I believe I'm getting there. So I have to share.
Okay. Got at least one thumbs up out of 128. Great. Perfect. And a raised hand. Thank you. Sweet. Cool. All right. I think we can go to, you want me to take control, or I can't actually take control anymore? So could you go to the next slide?
Sure.
Okay. So yes, some decision factors. Sorry, I gotta catch my brain back up. Some decision factors on data events versus business events. You're typically using data events when you need like a data syncing, logging, and integration with your external systems that don't require instant updates. So I'm not trying to sound like a broken record here, but I really want to pound this in your guys' heads that you don't want to use data events when you need real-time updates or synchronous calls. I would recommend any of the other tool sets for that matter. So speaking of other tool sets, let's go to the next slide. Let's talk about some virtual entities. Virtual entities for us are very close to entities, where entities are really close to F&O or D365. Virtual entities are that other side. So when you're thinking about like a third-party application needing to connect to our data, they're going to do that typically through virtual entities. And I believe somebody talked ad nauseum for about an hour on OData and virtual entities, so I won't go on that much more. Next slide. Yeah, we can go ahead and skip that. You guys can review this slide. We're going to share this later, but this is essentially kind of describing what I mentioned before. You've got entities over on the right and virtual entities on the left, and then you've got some connectors that make the magic happen. So typically, you've got an application that needs to know real-time sales order information on the left, and it's connecting to our entities or our F&O database through their virtual entity connection. Over on the top right are just some single callouts. You'll need to make sure that is public is yes. That's Nathan, you'll have to correct me if I'm wrong. I think it's actually defaulted to no. So as you're creating an entity, it's not on by default. So if your intention on making an entity public, you'll need to check that box. It's commonly missed. Okay, next slide. All right, dual write. Dual write is easily explained from my own words as the synchronous connection between CE and F&O. So we have an ability to customize tables in F&O and customize tables in CE, and dual write allows us to connect the pipes, if you will. So a contact on the CE side maps to a customer on the right or on the F&O side, and I think I've got an illustration on that in the next slide. Actually, one more slide over. Yeah, so this kind of illustrates what dual write is. It's kind of that middle section of this slide or this diagram. So you've got a D365 sales up on the top that maps with an account and contact that matches with our customer and contact in F&O. Same with a product and price list. Same quote matches with quote, order matches with our sales order, and our invoice matches with our invoice. So these are the out of the box connectors, but again, you can make your own custom connections using dual write, and you'd have many more mappings to handle. One quick call out, just like our entity call out, when you're customizing a table in sales or customizing something in dual write or in F&O rather, it's important to remember that the field length should match on both sides, or you'll get an error that typically doesn't make any sense. So when I said on the previous two slides that it's tightly coupled, the SQL schema or the table schema must match exactly. So next slide. All right, custom services. This is your typical REST solution, or where you'll have SOAP, or you'll have XML or JSON as your connection, and this is where you're building out things fully custom. So if you guys are familiar with your 2012 days, this is where you used AIF, and this is where you just deployed your own custom work from scratch. So custom services are typically when you've I think as best practice is described as kind of a last resort. So as technical architects, we like to find solutions that work out of the box as much as possible, and make as few as customizations as possible. But as a developer bootcamp, I think all of us see our hammers and we're handed out nails. So we like to build stuff. So custom services is where we get to do that from scratch. So that happens to be why it's my favorite one. But I try to resist the temptation to always recommend custom services. Next slide. Yeah, so a little bit of characteristics. I kind of talked about this. This is where you'll have very, very custom logic. Your flexibility is, of course, there because it's custom, and your data handling is exactly how you need it. So that's when I would suggest going for this plan. It's been my experience that there is almost always a need for a custom service. So you'll end up needing to have this in your toolbox as you kind of grow up in the D365 development land. Next slide, please. But what about integration patterns? Nathan, what can you help us out with that?
Okay. Sorry, I've had to manage Windows. But suppose talked us through some of our sort of tools that we have, and sort of following our Turbo Overkill sort of theme. One of the things that we have to do now is just sort of to have standard integration patterns. These are standard sort of solutions that we can drop in to present when we're presented with a problem. Everything is going to be a little bit different for every time we do this, but this just makes ideas that are repeatable and easy to use and easy to follow, because we have just common patterns. And when we start looking at some of them, you'll sort of see like, oh, that makes sense. Yeah, there's, you're going to do that for all of your different types of integrations. But it also just adds a layer of robustness because in the days, I'll call it legacy, so that's AX 2009 and AX 2012, older versions of the product. That was all typically on-prem, and we had to have line of sight to our integration partners in some way, which was typically really difficult to do. So that meant we were just talking to local resources, so local file shares, FTP servers maybe, but usually stuff that's pretty close, and there really wasn't much extra stuff to do. You talked to the thing you needed to get data from, and then you got the data and you processed it. But now that we're in the cloud, we have to have this extra layer of robustness and reliability. And Microsoft has given us tools to have basic events happen, have basic logic execute in a particular way, such that we've got tools that historically we haven't had, that are more cloud-centric, that allow us to react and respond and just do stuff from an integration perspective, or just a data perspective. And these are tools that are new for the cloud, that we just haven't had in the past. So we have to add robustness with some middleware components, but that adds a certain amount of reliability, such that F&O will generate our event, whatever that may be, or do the thing we want to do, and then it hands it off to someone else or something else to process it further. And F&O has done its job, and its job is done, and then it's up to the next thing to process that to its to where it needs to go. And what that really does is help define responsibilities between X++ and all of our outside producers and consumers of data. So what that means is F&O is going to do one part of the entire integration workload. We have let's say our producer, in this example, making the message, and we typically have something, at least one thing in between, that is sort of helping the message along the way. So first, just a basic pattern that we have is an event-driven pattern. So something happens inside of F&O and we want to respond to it. So here we're using a data event. So specifically, the sales order confirmation record has been written or inserted, and we're going to event off that rather than a business event. A business event would be perfectly fine here. Both communicate to the outside of F&O that something has happened and we need to respond to it. What this does is for our data event, it takes a payload that represents the underlying data entity that was used here, and looks up that record, converts it into JSON, and then puts it in our service bus queue. And what this does is a couple things, and this is going to be something I mentioned several times throughout this, is this interaction right here and our consumer over here which happens to be just a warehousing system, their interactions are decoupled. So we may have a batch process that posts the sales order confirmation that makes that record. And then we write an event payload here. But then this piece, this is a logic app. It can be any kind of cloud runtime. If you like Amazon, if you like Google, those will be fine too. We're just showcasing Microsoft tech. But a logic app would then process that message. So again, batch job confirms the sales order, let's say after 15 minutes. But that triggers a data event. We get all kinds of sales order confirmation header information written to our service bus queue. Then we have a logic app that runs, let's say, every 5 minutes to check that queue, see if there's anything that are processed. If so, we go out to Data Lake, now called a Synapse Link, to get any kind of information we may need from the sales order. Once we've identified that information is there, it's available, our logic app will take the information from here, enrich it with some information from over here, and then send it off to its consumers. In this particular workload, we have a logic app that is inserting rows into a staging database from an outside consumer. So F&O runs a process. It goes out to our Azure middleware. Our Azure middleware does its thing, which is respond to the event, enrich it with some data, then drop it off at our consumer that's interested in this particular event happening. And what this means, from an X++ perspective, this is out-of-the-box functionality. This right here and this right here, again, out-of-the-box features from Azure and FSC or F&O. But then we have a logic app, which can be C# or Python. There's a few other languages that just facilitates and coordinates all of the data and formats it in a way that our consumer needs to have it. So in this instance, we're doing like database ODBC inserts, but it can be JSON, XML, flat file, CSV, whatever you can think of. So any questions so far? Next is a pattern where it's called a claim check or luggage handling. What this means is we take our event and we sort of separate it out into two things that we're interested in. In this example, we're using a business event. The business event represents our claim, which just means something happened. And we can't get the entire scope of what happened, but we know the trigger for moving it to its next step. So we take this business event and put it out in a service bus queue. Then we have a logic app that monitors that queue, very similar to the last one. But what we're doing is having that logic app go out to Data Lake, also known as Azure Synapse Link, and get a bunch of extra data related to that event that we couldn't possibly event out as part of that event. So an example would be, actually, let me just flip back to the last example here. Here we have a sales order confirmation. And we're taking our sales order confirmation and basically finding our sales order headers and lines and sending them off. What this could be is that, let's say we have an event where a customer goes delinquent by 90 days. Now, we're going to need to collect a lot of information about that customer, their outstanding transactions, open invoices, all kinds of stuff that we can't possibly include in an event message. Event messages are meant to be really small. So once we say, hey, we've got, we've generated our first 90 days past claim letter, we have an event on that goes out to our logic app, and our logic app triggers, it says, hey, we've got a customer that has a bunch of stuff that's 90 days past, and we go to the data lake and find out what all that stuff is, and generate a new message to send it off to some other system. Let's say after 90 days, that customer and some of those transactions get sold off to a debt collection agency, or go to some other department or something like that. But we would want to include all kinds of additional information, and that's the check. So we have our claim, which is our event, and then the check, which is all the extra stuff. That's why it's called luggage handling, because you can sort of think of it as, when you board a flight, you would get some kind of tag that represents any luggage you may have claimed, and that tag allows you to retrieve it at your destination. Similar sort of idea where we've got a tag or a claim, and then here's our check, which is all the extra stuff that our endpoint outside consumer is interested in. Next is request and reply. So this is simply OData. So we've talked about this before, but we have a logic app in this instance saying, create a customer. It goes to an OData endpoint. My logic app waits for a response, and then eventually my logic app will get an OData response that fills out the customer number. So in this instance, we're creating a customer. We don't know the customer number, and we can get a response with that customer number, and our logic app waits for that response. So again, request and reply. And this is just describes OData, and this gets used quite a bit in terms of integrations. Next, something you might encounter is called a routing pattern. And that's where if you have, so let's say multiple legal entities or operate across multiple continents, there may be extra steps or extra information that you will want to happen when you create a customer. So in this instance, we got to create customer message from some outside system. It doesn't matter what it is. It goes into our logic app, and our logic app says, looks at the message and says, am I creating a customer in the EU? If yes, then I have to use my EU customers endpoint. And if it's not, I'm just going to assume it's in North America because there's no other type of customers that this organization may have. And send it to our North America endpoint customers. And this is important because our data requirements for our EU customers may be different than our North America customers. So for instance, Italy has some additional data point requirements around customers that North America customers do not have or would not have. So this would be a way to capture that, but still, have one generic inbound message that we may not have any control over and route it to specific endpoints that present or do not present with particular data points that, each endpoint may or may not be interested in. So again, just another way to match our desired outcome with a generic message that's going to include a bunch of stuff we may or may not care about. Next is just a splitter pattern. So again, from an inbound workload, we don't know exactly what kind of file we're going to get or what it may present as or what it would look like. So when doing integrations, this is an example of, we have multiple steps, a multi-step process. We may get a set of orders that is represented as, 3 orders here. And I don't want to process 3 orders at a time. I want to process 1 order at a time because I can send, I can have a logic app that just processes 1 message at a time. So what I need is just a logic app or just middleware in general to split that message up into 3 single messages rather than 1 message with 3 elements in it. So that's what we're doing here. We take this message that has 3 parts in it, have a logic app split it out and drop it off in Azure Service Bus Queue. That just takes the 3 messages as individual messages. Then a logic app just processes those 1 at a time from that queue, and we send it over to an OData endpoint. Next are pipes and filters. Again, this is an example of a multi-step process where out in the cloud, we can have middleware pieces that do just 1 or 2 things. I try and keep them simple just because as long as it's well documented, it makes it really easy to see, number 1, where something failed if it did happen to fail. And 2, we don't have very complex logic apps because logic apps if you're unfamiliar with what logic apps are, very similar to Power Automate in that you can have a GUI editor to sort of just graph out what your logic would be. But you can have logic apps that are quite complex and very difficult to manage, understand, or debug. So if we can keep them small, it's generally advisable. It's sometimes we can't do it, but it's a good thing to try for. But again, we have an order. Let's say that order comes in as an XML format. Logic Apps doesn't do XML especially good. It does JSON really well. So we convert it just from XML to JSON as our first step. Then we hand that off to another Logic App. And then we're going to validate that order from some source. Order validation can be a lot of different things. So if you have something that requires age validation, you could put that step here to validate, your consumer is known and is known to be of an age where they can purchase that product or create an order. Next, we can have the next logic app just confirm it's not a duplicate. Sometimes outside systems will just send duplicate orders. So we can have a step in here that filters out any duplicate orders. At this point, we've got a quote unquote clean order, just meaning it's an order that has passed a few different things, whether it's a utility check or some other order validation. And now we've got a clean order. We can drop that off in a service bus queue, and then again, have a logic app process that into our OData endpoint. Very similar, sort of with load leveling. We can have lots of outside consumers that may drop off a lot of messages at once, and we don't want to overload either our logic app or our endpoints. So I'll talk about this a little bit later, but a lot of our endpoints are throttled in some way, meaning that at some point, if you just try and throw 10,000 transactions at them or 10,000 interactions, some of those will be declined by the AOS. So you'd have to respond to that declination. So one way that we can do that if we want to make sure that we don't send too many orders to F&O is to have all of our orders go into a service bus queue. Then we have a logic app that, let's say, runs every 1 minute and then processes the first 30 messages in that queue. So what that does is time locks us to 30 orders per minute. So whatever the throughput is on F&O, we don't exceed that. So there's a much less likelihood of getting throttled by F&O. It could still happen, but this is a really easy, simple way to just time fence some of our interactions because we don't want to get throttled by Microsoft. Next, similarly, is just the idea of a circuit breaker. So we'll get an order in, it goes into a service bus queue. We'll have a logic app that confirms that F&O is actually there first. So if we build this into our standard integrations, that means F&O is there most of the time. It's there 99% of the time, 99.9. But if it's down for maintenance, scheduled or Microsoft maintenance, this logic app can say F&O isn't there right now, so I'm going to pause execution for an hour, put my message back in the queue, and then it'll just sort of sit and wait, and then another schedule will kick off. Confirm that F&O is there, and if so, go ahead and make that order. Lastly, is this idea of a process manager, and I don't have the individual logic apps called out here, but sometimes we'll get orders or just data from outside consumers that is everything. So as of, for instance, like it's somewhat common in e-com workflows to when you get a new order, that order is sort of started and finished before you even get it. And what I mean by that is you've got a new customer with a new order and payment has already been collected and tendered. So you've got multiple messages that you need to process there. But again, you've got this thing in the middle that'll split the message and process them in the sequence that F&O requires. So first you make your customer, Second, you make your sales order. Third, you'd go ahead and invoice that sales order, and then you can go ahead and make the payment journal against that sales order and invoice for your customer. And this can be split up into multiple logic apps. But again, we've got multiple endpoints that we can use. And I've focused sort of heavily on OData. OData gives you a lot of utility value. But right here, Beau talked about those custom services. This is an example of one of those. Microsoft has examples that they ship F&O with, but they're not enabled. They're the service is there, but the service group is not there. So you make a service group to expose some of these services for Microsoft. But this is an example where a clear delineation of what OData and just REST operations can do is they do create, read, update, and delete. They're really good at that. But Microsoft really doesn't like to ship them with these things called OData actions, which allow them to do arbitrary code execution of your design. But if we need that code execution, such as post an invoice for a sales order, we can have a custom service do that. So typically the recommendation here is if you want to use a custom service, it's for some kind of posting, or in general, custom services are typically high performance. So if you need to get into that hyperscale, you can do that too. But OData and just DMF data entities offer tons of utility value because they're just there and they sort of work. Sometimes not the most performant, but unless you're getting into large or hyperscale, that's perfectly fine. But again, we've got a lot of different interactions. We've got one thing managing those. So next one, talk about ammo management. Really, that's the idea here is budget management, because Azure's not free. Azure can be cheap, but it's never free. So, I mentioned earlier, our F&O endpoints can be throttled, which means our meter for performance measurement inside of F&O is time. How much time do we have available to get data in, whatever that data might be? Azure, on the other hand, scales based on money. So we've got two different meters we potentially have to manage for. If we need Azure to go faster, we can throw money at it. We can't just throw money at F&O and have it, instantaneously scale up based on demand. So we sort of have to, manage our budgets, and our budgets present as one is time, one is money. So we sort of have to keep that in mind. And that's why you've seen a lot of examples where items are decoupled, where we have some kind of temporary storage. And that's because we want to just be aware that F&O can only handle so much volume. But Azure, if it's set up to do so, can sort of scale itself to the moon, and that just becomes a money problem rather than a time problem. But it allows for demand spikes between the two. So for instance, I've had one customer where once a day they would call it their order sweep. They would take all the orders from their order systems from the day prior and dump them into F&O. And that could be about 10,000 orders that show up with about 2 or 3 sales order lines on them. That is a huge demand spike as far as F&O is concerned. For Azure, Azure would scale itself up if we allow it to do so. But that allows, decoupling allows us to say in the middleware component, only process this amount of volume to make sure that F&O doesn't have an issue with that. And, we don't want to deal with throttling. Throttling is something that we can build into our integrations, but avoiding it in general is in general the best approach rather than dealing with the after effects of getting throttled. And really that's just boils down to you've got your demand and your availability. So, our red line is our demand and our blue line is our availability. And we're mostly talking about F&O here. So we can use our middleware to try and flatten that red line to match the blue line as much as we can and make sure our red line stays under our blue line because the uppermost limit of that blue line from F&O doesn't change rapidly. So Microsoft can scale F&O up and down based on a behind-the-scenes metric they call pressure, but it is not instantaneous or immediate. So if 10,000 orders just show up out of nowhere, we'd be throttled first. Then if pressure remains high, then Microsoft would spin up additional resources behind the scenes. But Azure scales based on demand much faster than F&O. And really, this comes down to demand versus dollars. So we use the decoupled architecture quite a bit because when you start looking at costs, and Beau talked about this as well, but I'm more focused on like Azure costs, real time can be quite expensive. But when you start introducing a little bit of time gap or just temporal delay, when you go to near real time, that becomes we drop a dollar sign, but that becomes a little bit less expensive. And then when you go to a small delay, that becomes even more less expensive. And then when you go to a large delay, like once a day, that becomes actually quite economical and cheap from Azure and related work, cloud infrastructure, just because, data can change quite rapidly. And if we're trying to process every single data change, that can result in a lot of little, Azure transactions or interactions that may cost a penny or even a fraction of a penny. But then if we're doing 1 million transactions a day, that's 1 million, fractions of a penny, whatever that may be. And that adds up really quickly. So we always, in general, recommend that, decoupling architecture. And really, I've talked about this before, but Microsoft does have throttling specifically on OData and custom services, and that's priority-based throttling, and you can control some of that priority. So I've linked here to 2 articles because that could be another hour-long talk in and of itself. But Microsoft has given us some tools, but they are not going to eliminate throttling, so it's up to manage what's important, what's not, and give F&O some bias based on that so that we can define what is critical and what isn't, and manage from there. But really, this is more just a balancing act. And this is an example. Let's say we get 10,000 orders per day, which totals to 30,000 things. When we look at available solutions, we could use logic apps with OData. It's not ideal because we don't know when those orders are going to show up. If you spread that out across an entire day, OData can handle that load just fine. If you don't spread that out, and let's say they drop, those orders show up 8 a.m., 8 in the morning every single day, as 30,000 things you need to worry about, that's not so great. We're going to have to deal with throttling. Similarly, you could use logic apps with DMF endpoints. Those are another related endpoint to OData. It just allows us to use DMF entities a little bit more directly. It's better, but again, we don't know exactly when those orders are coming in, and it can be a little bit chatty in terms of how the DMF interacts with this stuff. Then lastly, what about Azure Data Factory? So very simply, Azure Data Factory is SSIS in the cloud. If we have any data people in here, I know that's a gross oversimplification, but that works really well if, let's say, we have data sets that we want to manage rather than messages. So again, you have to think about, are my interactions events, like individual messages, or am I working with data sets? Data sets have their own set of tooling that work really well for them. Events have a different set of tooling. So like logic apps are really good for individual messages, but if you want to bring in 10,000 orders, Azure Data Factory with some DMF endpoints, and potentially, a composite entity is maybe even a better solution. But again, this boils down to you need to know how your outside consumers or producers want to interact with F&O, because that really prescribes the available tech that you'd want to use. And lastly, when we talk about that decoupled architecture, we've got, just inside of Azure, very cheap, fast options available. So like the Azure Service Bus Queue that I've talked about several times, it's cheap as fast. It's a queue. I mean, there's not much to it, but the amount of throughput that we can get for the standard tier, which starts at $10 per month, is quite high. So there's a lot of utility value here for just $10 US a month. Very similar with topics. That's just a collection of queues. So if you have multiple interested partners, so let's say when you post a sales order invoice, and you have a couple different systems that are interested in that sales order invoice, you can have F&O send a message to a topic. That topic will replicate it and send it down multiple service bus queues. So you can have multiple producers monitoring their own queue, but we replicate messages and send them to those interested parties based on whoever may be interested. And then finally, we've got Azure Blob Storage, super, super cheap. But that's only if we don't care about order of operations. It'll just send